Okay, welcome everyone. I would like to call the June meeting of the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission to order. Can I have a roll call, please, Amanda?
Yes. Chair June Hansberger,
Present?
Vice Chair Patricia Trouth,
Here.
James Gross,
Here.
Glenn Johnson,
Present.
Harold Standerfer,
Present.
David Thiele,
Here.
and Jim Wong.
Here.
Thank you, Amanda. I would like to invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay, the first order of business is approving the minutes. And I think before we do that, I just don't know, is the computer I'm at not working, or what have I done wrong? Sorry to interrupt, but what do I need to touch to get?
Thanks, Karen.
I kept waiting for it to get going, and I don't have anything. The G, I needed to click on that, okay.
Usually it auto loads, so something happened.
Okay,
Software that you enter the collision reports or no?
last time the touchscreen was not working for me. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, I apologize for that. Let's go ahead, and our first order of business is approving the minutes from the May meeting. Hopefully, everyone has a chance to look over the meetings. Is there a motion to approve?
I
to approve.
move to approve with one little change. So the, under adjournment, we're still calling you the vice chair, so,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you for catching that. I did not see that. Okay, so do I have a second with that change?
I think just second it on the screen.
Oh, okay, perfect. I guess then, shall we vote? Yes, okay, so vice chair is, I see, thank you. So can we vote on this? Okay, the minutes passed unanimously. Perfect, thanks, everyone. Next up is oral communications, but we don't have any of those tonight, so we will just fly on to number 6, which is special presentations and proclamations and announcements. And we have the Sheriff Department data, and I would like to say thank you to Jeremy Collis for joining us tonight. Thank you very much. Do commissioners have any questions? We got this, I think this just arrived today, so a few commissioners might need a moment just to look over this. Thank you very much. And I do want to thank you for the other document that contains the list of what the violations were. That was really helpful. I looked at that this afternoon.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, sorry it took so long, but everything still has to get entered and all that for us to compile the data.
Oh, no, thank you for getting it to us. Much appreciated. There's this map, and then I think there's also a list if anybody, did everybody have a chance to look at that? Okay. Did any commissioners have questions? Would you like to
Yeah, I have one.
go?
Hi, Sergeant Collis. So this was 2 months ago now, but I know there was going to be an increased emphasis on Lucadia Boulevard around El Camino. Is that occurring? I see it does look like El Camino Real is coming up in top citation locations, but it's also still the highest in terms of collisions. So just wondering if there has been a shift there to provide more police surveillance, especially in lieu of the cameras being down.
Sure, our motors have been working in the north coastal area. There's one thing to know, as I mentioned last time, that most of those collisions that you see along El Camino Real are in parking lots, so they're not actually out on the roadway. But that intersection is a problem intersection. Also, one thing to note with this particular map, that while the other data is all up to date for the previous months, this map is a map we've always given month after month, and so some of the data is not all in here, just because this is done from the first of the month to the end of the month, and they're still inputting citations when this particular map is generated, just so you're aware. But I have some motors that are definitely working North El Camino Real area and have written numerous tickets there this month.
Great, thanks. I've been around there. I feel like I've seen increased presence too, just anecdotally. Second question is, when, we've had a lot of issues more recently, a lot of concerned citizens around things like road signs being knocked down, where it kind of apparently, it appears it's a hit and run. Are those still collected as a traffic collision, or are those just not collected as a traffic collision?
They're supposed to be. It's property damage collisions, and when it involves city property, we generally are, as a rule, supposed to take those reports. So if it's just a sign knocked over and it's something that can be fixed, sometimes I've seen signs actually repaired on the spot. But I would say they're supposed to. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And then final question for me, I know I had requested like a more long-term access to citation data based on the idea that with the Switters data, we can get a very long historical patterns on collision data. I know you were working with the city potentially on providing more access to this information. That was about a month ago. Any update there on trying to provide more historical data to us and to the city?
And that was with the spreadsheet, just with data alone, is that
No,
right?
that's more just like long-term citation data so that we can map it against collision data to try to notice any correlations between citations and collisions.
Well, the other spreadsheet that's on here as well might have some of that information.
Oh, right, sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at this. Is this just the last month though, or would this be long-term historicals?
This is not long-term, but it is for the last 4 months.
Okay, cool, I'll take a look at this. But yeah, I think anything that we could get historically would be great if that does become available.
Sure. Yeah, Ben, we had some pretty good discussions with our one analyst at our station. Unfortunately, he's a little overtasked right now, but I remember someone asked for just Excel, just data alone, and they could input the data themselves as far as, that's something that could be easily done that I could definitely do.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, Commissioner Thiele?
Thank you. I know you mentioned you had some citations or more motor activity. You had some motors on North El Camino Real. Anything on South El Camino Real, just south of Santa Fe, heading down into towards the freeway? I guess it's a little bit far from the freeway, but you have that downhill.
Sure.
Just curious.
Surprisingly, historically, when I was a motor in that area, surprisingly, the speeds were fairly low going southbound. Northbound, not the case. Ironically, going up the hill, we saw more citations in that area. That is one of the favorite spots for my motors to work. Day to day, they kind of just, we're trying, end of school, we tried to focus on the schools, and then they go out there to essentially their favorite spots, and with an emphasis on where there's collisions are occurring right now. So that's one of their spots that they go to fairly regularly. But if they've been there recently, I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner?
Yes, I'm just wondering if we've had any serious injuries or fatalities in that period.
There's been some injury collisions. Solana Beach just had one the other day. We have not had any fatalities. But nothing comes to mind of any major injury collisions.
So that gives us a pretty good safety record for the period. Thank you.
I think the last one we had was Christmas night, where we had that.
Or New Year's, actually,
New Year,
was the
yeah.
fatal pedestrian, that's
Yeah.
right. So New Year's Day at midnight, essentially, we had the one fatal pedestrian collision. And they're still working on that investigation.
Any other commissioners?
I do have a question that's not specifically related to this data, and that's on whether you have any complaints or any action on Sharrows, whether there's any accidents or complaints or incidents, anything to do with Sharrows. I'm just interested in how they're being received.
Well, we've had Sharrows for a long time now. I remember my first occurrence when I first, 10 years ago became a motor and was never seen one before. So since then, there's part of the community that likes to give their positive feedback on it and some that give their negative feedback on it. So I definitely hear both sides on a fairly regular basis. As for the deputies, it's not really our place to say. We just enforce the law best we can.
Okay, so you can't say whether they're positively received or negatively received. You hear both sides.
I hear both sides, yes.
Okay, and you don't see any instance of more accidents or fewer accidents because of the bicycles riding in the middle of the lane, anything like that?
I don't have the data in front of me, so I can't really say, but I mean, if you're gonna put more bicycles in the way of vehicles, there's probably gonna be more collisions, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm not asking for any quantitative data, just subjectively how you feel, but
I mean, it's, over the years, I've seen numerous cyclists hit by vehicles because of their place in the roadway. I can't say for sure whether that's increased or not increased, to be honest with you. Yeah, I can't honestly say.
okay, I understand. You can't really say anything without hard numbers, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions if the other commissioners are done with theirs. Couple things I wanted to ask was, I know that last time we were here, we were talking about changing some signage on Ballure, and I didn't see that any tickets were issued on Ballure just because that section where cars, it said no parking, but you had asked for it to be no stopping, and I didn't know if the signage had changed and if you had had a chance to ticket there. So I was just going to circle back about that.
On our side, I do know the work order was either sent or is in process of approval. It's usually not that quick because we don't install signs. We just ask our Public Works Department if they have those signs in our sign shop in the stock. Basically, they put it in the queue and with all the other stuff they're doing. If they're not, they would have to order it. I don't think the signs are out there yet, but it is in process, so.
Okay, great. So hopefully that'll help for the next school year then to make that corridor a little safer.
And that, just to clarify, it wasn't on Ballure. Those signs were on
Melba.
Mel.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Bonita or Melba. On Bonita.
Bonita.
Yeah, they were on west side of Bonita.
Yes, I should have, I wrote down the wrong B street on Bonita. Thank you. Okay, did you have a comment for me too?
Same thing, yeah, last I heard, their work order was in place and just waiting for that to go up.
Okay, perfect. And then my next one was when I was looking at the data quickly this afternoon, I was also checking to see if there was any bicycle citations or, whether it was motorized bikes or just regular cycling. And I don't think I saw any. Is that, did I miss it? Do you regularly cite e-bikes or regular bicycles? And is that data on there?
We do. I don't know exactly how the data's. So if we cite somebody, for example, a bicycle running a red stop sign, it looks the same. It'll be the same charge as if it's a vehicle. It's just the court handles it differently when it's a bicycle. So some of those could be cited as bicycles, but it shows up the same bicycle or otherwise. But I know with helmets and other, basically for juveniles with the e-bikes, we actually have a motor deputy that handles essentially kind of a program where we cite them, we hold on to the cites, and then they go through a program, get educated, and then we just basically not dismiss a citation, but we're able to get rid of it essentially through the vehicle code without them actually having to go through court.
Okay, great. And I think Amanda pulled up a few here or somebody was pulling that up for me. Thank you very much. Abe was, I couldn't tell who was typing. So I saw there were a few citations for bicycles. So, and then I was seeing that on the next city council, it looks like there's going to be the implementation of, I guess if it passes, a new rule that you can only ride one person per bike unless it's designed. Has that also been something that you guys have been ticketing and has been a real concern, or could you speak to that?
Yeah, the new, we've looked over the new municipal code several times, and there's a few different aspects to it. That is one of the portions of it that I remember. I can't recall citing that, possibly because there is a vehicle code site we could give for that, but the municipal code gives us a little bit more leverage, and most of the times it's kids, to be honest. So whether the guys have actually written that ticket for the vehicle code, I'm not sure, but I don't know, to be honest.
It's okay, I just was wondering how that was coming. So I think this is, hopefully this will make cycling safer for the kids and pedestrians and everybody, because I did see one of the citations was a bicycle on the wrong side of the road. And I will say, I see that quite often, like bikes going on the wrong direction, either on the sidewalk, in the bike lane. So I'm glad to see that is being addressed, because I think that is definitely dangerous.
And then the new section is going to be just basically having to ride appropriately and within the safe riding safely, essentially. And this gives us a little more leverage.
And my last question is again about bicycles. Are they allowed, are e-bikes allowed on the sidewalks, or they are allowed on sidewalks?
In the business district, they're not, but residential areas, other areas like that, they are. And that the new municipal code actually speaks to that, but is that essentially, if I remember right, just continues with the same rule. But they have to ride in a safe, prudent manner when on the sidewalk, so.
Okay.
An e-bike going 20 miles per hour on a sidewalk is probably not safe and prudent like we've seen, so.
Okay, good. That's great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you so much for providing this spreadsheet for us. I know we've been asking, and it's a lot of work for the sheriff's office, so it's much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, on to our next one, which I think we're now on to 7A. Our action items here, yeah, so we're on to 7A, which is safety and mobility enhancements for Saxony Road. So as I look, do we have a presentation from engineering?
Thank you, Chair. As usual, I go over the report to clarify, and if there are questions, I'll answer at the end of the report review. This was on the division's work plan, Saxony Road Safety and Mobility Enhancement, similar to Quail Gardens Drive that was presented 2 months ago. At that meeting, Commission also directed us to look at Saxony and come back with potential measures for improving safety and mobility along the corridor between Encinitas and Lucadia. Obviously, everybody's familiar with the location of the roadway. Some data collection and some information we had on the roadway. 3 locations, we had the speed radar feedback signs that would collect the speed and volume data. Puebla, at Poinsettia, and at Silverberry, the data collected was for about 30-some days. Total vehicles recorded was about 190,000. The average daily was 5,600. Posted at speed 35. And our 85th was 37, and this is Puebla, closer to Lucadia. As you can see from this small diagram, about 80% of the vehicles are at or below the speed limit, and about 19% are over the speed limit. 8% of those are within 5 miles of the speed limit, and the rest, the 11%, 11.2, are more than 5 miles over the speed limit. Similarly, at Poinsettia, about 175,000 records. Average daily traffic was a little bit lower, about 4,000. 85th percentile was also 37 here. Speed compliance with the speed limit was kind of similar, 77.5% were at or below speed limit, and about 22.5 were over the speed limit. In this case, a big majority of the ones that were over the speed limit, out of the 22.5, 18.6 of them are within 5 miles of the speed limit. Only about 4% are more than 5 miles over the speed limit, which most probably has to do with the fact that the speed limit is 35, which is based on a survey. It seems a little bit high for a relatively unimproved road, but that's what the survey showed that was conducted a few years ago. Still valid survey. There hasn't been any improvement on the road recently that would justify a new survey. We usually keep them valid until what MTCD allows us, which is about 7 years. We can go up to 10. We usually don't go out that far. And obviously everything will change next year, July 24, when the new AB 43 kicks in. There are a lot of changes with the speed limit rule in the state. And this is a third location, Silverberry. Similarly, 83% of the 170,000 vehicles the data was collected for were driving below the speed limit, at or below, and 17% going over. 85th percentile was 36 at this location. With regards to cross section, the roadway has 4 or 5 different cross sections. Starting from Encinitas Boulevard going up, the road is pretty wide, about 56 feet wide, pavement width. North of Sunny Drive, in front of Y, it starts to close down, narrow down to 50 feet. When it gets to Saxony Place, and then narrows down to 42 and then 36. A few aerials. This is just north of the Saxony signal, where, as you can see, the roadway is pretty wide. This is looking northbound, just north of the signal. This easterly area is basically a no man's land. It looks like a travel lane, but it's not a travel lane. And as you can see, there is red curb here, so it's not actually a parking lane either. It's just that the road is pretty wide, and you can see the southbound lane is also very wide. The cars parked on the west can show you how wide the road is. Going further north, obviously the road narrows down. This is an aerial view right around the Y parking, this business center on the east side. As you can see, the road is still pretty wide. It's around 42, 44 feet wide. Only one lane in each direction, and the edge areas are mainly for parking, but the fact that the majority of the segment here is red curbed, it cannot be really utilized. As you can see, the area where it's not red curbed here in this aerial photo, the cars are parked, but the other curbs on this aerial photo are pretty much all of them are red, although you can see a parking lane here, but it's not being utilized. Going further north toward Leashtag Foundation entrance on the Saxony side, we do have an edge area that again can be utilized as a parking lane, but there is limited parking demand here. There aren't that many residential properties, and there are also some no parking signs on both sides that would limit availability of parking. North of that, north of Saxony Place, is where the residential properties start, and the road is a lot less improved per se, no major sidewalk, and the road narrows down to only 36 feet wide with parking on both sides. And as you can see, also trash bins get on the road. So we looked at the road, these different cross sections, and looked for opportunities to improve the roadway with active transportation, with safety improvements. And we looked at a bunch of options: lane narrowing, addition of the bike lanes, addition of sharrows, adding mini roundabout, quick bill roundabouts, and also adding new crosswalks or improving existing ones. After discussions with our fire department, due to various reasons, this apparently is a very, very frequently responded to road of the city, due to obviously various reasons, but they strongly rejected the possibility of inclusion of vertical deflections, speed cushions, speed tables, any kind of a raised traffic calming measure. So those were not included. After looking at various options, we also checked at availability of parking around the roadway to see if we want to shift the lanes and eliminate some parking to open up space, what will be lost and what we can gain. Should be noted that Saxony Road, the whole stretch from Encinitas to Lucadia Boulevard, is considered as a bike lane on the city's active transportation plan. So that we had as a mindset when we were looking into opportunities of improvement. We were trying to add the bike lane to the extent possible. So we looked at all these green lines are existing parking that's available on the roadway. As you can see in front of Y, the majority of the curb is really no parking, although it's available space, but only this small green area is available parking. Further north, parking is a little bit more available. When it gets to residential areas, it's now more and more available up to Puebla and then closer to Lucadia Boulevard. As you can see, it's pretty much parking available everywhere. When we looked at it, we noticed that up to the Y area and a little bit into the residential area, I think this is Saxony Place here, that's where we could keep the bike lane, we could add the bike lane in both directions considering the available width of the road and keep parking on one side of the roadway and not lose basically any parking. I did a quick math and it seems like we would even gain some parking spaces. It would be a one-sided parking. We can choose which side we put the parking. Some aerial footage that we have shows more parking on the east, some shows more on the west. I thought because of the fact that Y is on the west side, sometimes when there is an event going on, maybe there can be benefit to having the parking on the west, but both are options. We can have the parking lane on the east or on the west, but this would allow us to have a parking on the west or east and keep the number of travel lanes that we have. Where we have a turn pocket, we can keep the turn pocket and the bike lanes. When we don't have a turn pocket, we can have narrow lanes and a bike lane and a buffer and a door zone buffer. North of Saxony Place, when we get to the residential area and the narrow area of Saxony Road, if we keep the parking, we won't have room to keep the bike lane, so we would have to move to Sharrow. It would look something like this because the road is only 36 feet wide. Obviously, if we want to consider removal of parking, that's a different story. It would open up space to do other stuff, but considering the fact that the parking was heavily impacted in this area, and the roadway is not really improved to its full ultimate cross-section, I didn't include the parking removal option in here. Certainly, it's not impossible. It is an option. Another two ideas that we had was, one was at the entrance to the business center and to the Y northerly parking lot, there is a wide intersection footprint that we can incorporate a mini roundabout using quick build material, kind of like the one we did on Euless, very simple. Similarly at Silverberry, where the Lichtag Foundation entrance is at, these two have relatively wide footprints. We can do a small mini roundabout there at those locations. And also the existing crosswalk that we have just south of Y, we can improve that crosswalk with the new striping. If we add the bike lane and parking on one side and narrow down the travel lane, this crossing distance will be a lot shorter and more improved. These are all options. Our work plan this year did not include any budget for construction. It was just evaluation and studying the road. If it gets to next year and we are able to secure some funds, we might be able to implement some quick build measures here. But before taking this to council, I wanted to bring this to commission. And interestingly, again, although it was on our division's work plan, commission directed us to study this and bring back. So everything lined up properly before end of fiscal year. I'd like to provide this information to the commission, and let me know your thoughts, your suggestions, your recommendations, and your input, and then I'll include that in my report to council. With that, I'm open to questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Bedigan. That was great. I appreciate seeing the ideas for improving safety along Saxony. Not only safety for cycling, but I also am liking some of the pedestrian improvements that I'm seeing being implemented here. Do any commissioners have questions, comments? Yes. Commissioner Trouth.
Yes, so Abe, is the right-of-way the same width, like throughout, from Encinitas Boulevard to Leucadia Boulevard?
Most of our roads in the city, the right-of-way is pretty constant. It doesn't change. If it is a change, it's not that big to go down from like 50 or 60 to 30 or 40. There might be like 5 feet, 4 feet. But no, on Saxon, it's pretty much constant.
Pretty much the 50 feet?
I think it's
wide?
50
Yeah,
or...
Okay.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
it's 50.
Other commissioners? Sure. Commissioner Standiford?
Question on the upgrades or the improvements to the crosswalk there by the Y. What changes are you envisioning there?
So if the new cross-section is implemented, the roadway here is basically only one lane in each direction. And right now, as you can see, people have to cross a relatively wide distance. If the new cross-section is implemented, we'll have a bike lane and a buffer, another bike lane and a buffer, and the actual crossing distance would be a lot narrower. So we can create some sort of a striping bulb out option or something like that to narrow the crossing distance. So pedestrians, even when enter the road, they're still in a relatively secure area. So those are options when you have a crossing that really crosses 2 lanes, but the width is like 45 feet. You really don't need to cross 45 feet when you're only crossing 2 lanes of traffic.
Right, and the parking probably would switch to the west side?
Yeah, again, I have both options. I didn't want to finalize the decision before, doing a little bit more of a history check to see why we have that small stretch right by Y and why all the parking on the east side is already prohibited. I mean, the business area has its own parking. Yeah, we have this area that can keep parking. Yeah, this parking on the east side belongs to that business, and they have this other parking here. So there is parking for even Y has a huge parking lot, but I want to do we have a good amount of aerial footage for the past 10, 15 years that we can look into to see at different times how the parking utilization is. I'm not strongly positioned about is it going to be on the west or east, but it would be one-sided, I feel. We don't need parking on both sides. It's really there's not that much demand there.
Right, well, I think it makes more sense to have it on the west side.
That is currently on the sample cross-section that we're showing here. We are showing it on the west side. But as said, I did have some photos that showed some parking on the east side. But I'm with you because of why I feel because on the east side, we have those businesses. There's one complex, I'm not sure how they use Saxony, but that's good. This is good. If commission's supporting parking on the west, that's more in line with staff's position at this time.
Okay, Abe, I had a question here. Is speed seen as a problem on Saxony?
Good question. If we just go off of the speed limit, which is 35, as you saw, the data collection for that 45 days shows that a good 80 to 85% of the vehicles are at or below, and only about 5 to 10% of the vehicles are more than 5 miles over the speed limit, which is usually, I mean, I don't want to say it on the record. I don't think there is an official ticketing threshold, but I think the tickets I've received in my 20-some years of driving, I was usually more than 10 miles over the speed limit. If you're below 10 miles over the speed limit, chances of getting a ticket are slim. So if we consider that, we only have about like 5% or 10% that are 5 miles over the speed limit or more, which is not bad. In traffic world, we usually consider 7 miles over the speed limit as the threshold of, I guess, concerning speed, which in this case would be 42, which is very, very limited. Now, that being said, 35, I personally feel like is a little bit high for that, especially for the northerly stretch, where you get to the Leashtag area and north where it's just residential. 35 is a little bit high. So, but 85th came back at 36 and 37, which is not bad, and it's in line with the speed limit. Do I like it? No, but on paper, the speeding issue is not huge.
Okay,
technically
what I was
speaking.
wondering here is whether it's worth putting in something like a roundabout someplace north of the leach tag to calm the traffic down a bit.
Correct. So we do have right at leash tag an idea for a mini roundabout, as was presented earlier. So this is the leash tag entrance where the footprint of the intersection is relatively wide. It does allow us to put a small mini roundabout, neighborhood circle type measure there. How effective it would be, I haven't gone deep into the design to see how big of a footprint we can set aside for that circle, but it's certainly an option, and we do like that idea. I like more after doing the, if we can secure funding for this, if the lane narrowing is done with or without parking removal, if we do Sharrow, if we do bike lane, that part of it doesn't matter. If we narrow down the road to 10-footer lanes, I do like to do quickly a speed survey, and most probably we'll be able to lower this road with 10-footer lanes will not have a 35 mile per hour speed limit. This is high for a residential road. It will be lowered, I'm pretty sure. The reason that it was surveyed at this, and as you can see right now, it surveys at 37, 36, 85th percentile, is because that it's wide with no obstruction. A lot of areas on the roadway, we have these parking lanes that are basically parking prohibited. Like you have the line, but nobody can park. So it gives this runway type straight shot roadway, 18 feet lanes on each side with no obstruction, so people can go fast. And that creates the situation where you have to set the speed limit high.
Yeah, and I guess the alternative would be to add more dedicated bicycle lanes.
Correct. So the areas, that's my plan. The areas that we really don't have parking right now, it's already parking prohibited. Why do we need that edge line with the 8-9-footer area that nobody can use? Why not use it for a bike lane? The problem is where it gets narrower, the northerly half of the segment where we have parking on both sides of the road. It's residential, 36 feet wide, and the lanes are already at pretty much 10, 10 and a half, 11, and you have parking on both sides. So I cannot put a bike lane there unless I remove both sides of parking, which I don't have it proposed right now. I think it's a big, big undertaking, especially the fact that it's a relatively long stretch. It's not just a short piece of parking. It's like a quarter-mile long stretch to take away parking from both sides and add a bike lane. I'm sure you agree it's not like a super active biking facility in the roadway in the city. There's a little bit of slope entering Saxony. It is an option, don't get me wrong. And as I said, our active transportation plan does call it a bike lane road. But in all fairness, when they drafted the active transportation plan, they considered the ultimate cross-section of the roadway as to be the character of the road, not what we have out there right now.
And I have one other question. Do we know whether or not the leash tag group would favor a roundabout at their entrance?
I have not established any communication. What I had discussed with Leashtag and Y about a year and a half ago was that a lot of people go from Leashtag toward Y and vice versa. Like there is a great deal of pedestrian activity between the two facilities. I don't know if they are tours or educational trips that Y can schedules, but there is activity between the two, both peds and bikes. So this can certainly help. Why, if somebody comes from the west side, wants to cross Saxony at that location, this potential mini roundabout can help with that crossing.
Roundabout would help the pedestrians get across then. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Yeah, thanks, Abe. Quite a few questions here, as someone that, you know, travel on this road a lot. The first one is if you can go back to the satellite image of the YMCA parking. You got a better one, sorry, or that's more zoomed in. No, that's not it. I don't have the pages. There you go. So a lot of parents ride this road. So one, why is this not classified as a school zone? You have one of the largest preschools in Encinitas. You have the largest skate park. You have, I think, 6 baseball fields. You have the largest in the swimming pool in Encinitas, which, you know, is mostly for kids. Is there any reasons why this is not a school zone?
The CVC language, if I'm not mistaken, calls for 600 feet from the edge of a educational facility. I'm not sure how it defines that education, if it's just a school, if Y qualifies as an educational facility. But those, as you know, don't change the speed limit of the roadway. Those usually get the school assembly signage where it says 25 where children present or during pick-up drop-off period. Those are usually additional signage that we add to the speed limit, existing speed limit signage on the roadway. Yeah, I can certainly look into it and see if they're missing at school zone signage. Is there an
I think
actual
there's
school there?
Yeah, there's a preschool there. You know, it's one of the largest preschools in Encinitas, as far as I know. I mean, I have 2 kids that go there.
In the
yeah,
Y,
that's-
or it's on the east? It's on the east side, or it's in the?
It's on the west side in the Y. It's attached to the Y.
Oh, attached
close
to the Y,
road.
okay.
It's in the parking lot that's south of that parking lot that we're seeing here. The issue with this parking lot, and, you know, going by it every day, it blows my mind, is that area where you do allow parking, one, it obstructs any cyclist to basically have to go into the road. And there's randomly always like 3 cars there. I don't know why, you know, it's usually in the morning or in the afternoon you go there, but, and you're next to these just massive parking lots. And it creates a lot of pain for the cyclists to have to actually start to get into the traffic there. So I'm not sure why that parking was ever approved. As you can see, the entire area is parking, but it causes havoc for a cyclist in that area specifically. There's, of course, parking up and down, but that area right there is, I think, the worst. You probably have the most people that are sort of, if I was guessing, semi-speeding there to get into school or to get where they want to go. So that is just, you know, one very big problem that I want to highlight. I'd also like to say that, you know, I am worried about proposals like roundabouts. If we're keeping the speed limit at 35, I think you're just creating, right, you know, drag race areas for people to have fun with. So I would not propose roundabouts at the current speed limits. And then with AB 43, as you mentioned, or 34?
43.
43. Would that allow us to propose a lower speed limit in this area because of residential and school areas?
So AB 43, I think it's a good idea to do an informational item, the fact that you will be involved with implementing AB 43. A lot of things are changing with setting speed limits. One major change is that right now we're only allowed to basically mathematically round down the 85th percentile that we get from the speed surveys. And if there is a condition with the road that would justify that, lower the rounded number by only 1.5 mile per hour. So in this case, let's say I don't have the speed survey that was conducted a couple of years ago, but let's say the speed survey comes back, the 85th percentile comes back like what we have, 37 or 36. It rounds to 35, and that's it. If it's 36 or 37, when it rounds to 35, I have to set it at 35, unless on the survey I am allowed to. I have enough ammunition to say, well, there has been this many collisions, or there's major bike activity here, or there is a lot of pedestrian, or there are kids, or something. and that gives me the option to lower it by 5 miles per hour only and set it at 30. Now, how I write it, and when it's approved by commission and council after, and when I stamp it, when deputies take it to court, if that justification is not proper, I cannot just say too many collisions. One attorney would go through the public records request, gets the collision data, and it only shows 2 collisions in the past 10 years. The judge would say, hey, what kind of traffic engineer uses this as a justification? Ticket dismissed. So I have to have enough justification to lower. Lack of bike lane can be a good justification. Say, hey, there are a lot of bikes on this road, but there's no bike lane. AB 43, when it kicks in, July of next year, would allow cities to establish a network of these so-called safe routes, safe corridors or something, safety corridors, that gives a lot of discretion to cities, city officials to establish that network, and then that gives the city engineer an extra 5 mile per hour reduction. So in that case, the 36 becomes 30, and then we have another 5, basically making this a 25. It's a lot more, yeah, again, how judges would see AB 43 and how they would, kind of review tickets, that's a different story, but the law was enhanced a lot to give this extra teeth to the establishers of a speed limit per se to lower speed limits in the cities.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I didn't know all that. That sounds like very potentially positive news. And then, so on this like parking removal, are you under any coastal commission regulations? Again, this is just a perfect example of what we deal with almost every day there, where there's cars randomly parked there, and that you have these massive parking lots that, as far as I know, are completely open to the public. Could you remove those and with no issues?
It is most probably in the coastal commission. I think our coastal goes all the way to El Camino. The good thing is that, again, simple math, because we haven't finalized the design, but when I did a quick math, we will not lose because coastal commission usually considers the net added removal of parking. So with providing parking on one side, the chances are we even gain a few spots. Because there are a lot of red curves, as you can see, that I don't know why they're red. It's not really a side distance issue. Like there's a couple hundred feet of red just north of the access. The side distance is pretty good there. So yeah, once I design it, I will know for sure if we're actually losing parking or gaining, but I'm not concerned about it.
Okay. One final thing is, have we looked at all at actually moving to some sort of public access trail to the west of the Y that would connect off of Leucadia Boulevard and Encinitas Boulevard, so actually peds and cyclists could use a trail that connected to the back Y? I've heard of that proposal. I know that was part of potentially a bridge over the freeway with the Caltrans expansion of the freeway. Even without the bridge over the freeway, I think that could be something that could be incredibly safe and a way to go to actually remove cyclists and pedestrians from having to actually even travel on Leucadia Boulevard and Encinitas Boulevard in Saxony.
Oh yeah, the traffic division usually doesn't go that much off pavement per se. These are more our CIP divisions type of projects. I do know our active transportation plan calls for some sort of a bridge connection. I'm not sure if it's Puebla or where we have the Clark project, the Clark development projects where that one is being built. On the south side, our ATP shows a cross connection to the west side of the freeway. But to have a trail, you're talking about a north-south trail, not an east-west.
North-south trail
Yeah.
on the west side of the Y. There's quite a bit of what I think is city-owned land. And again, it would connect into it wouldn't connect all the way to Leucadia or Encinitas, but you could make it connect to some other roads there because what most parents do that ride this, as I know, that have talked to me, is they come either down Leucadia Boulevard, they take the side streets to, what is
Puebla.
thank you, and then they'll cut in. Because so you reduce the friction at the very north. Well, Leucadia and Saxony is just a mess, right? So you don't really want to be there if you're on a bike or a pedal. And then you also have the much narrower residential area. So you cut through all that. But once you get into this open area, it still feels really insecure because of the random parking and the speeds that are higher. So clearly, if you could just continue to ride the back ways, I think that would be by far the safest if that was possible. But that's just, I'm not sure. It sounds like it's not something you would look at, under your jurisdiction necessarily.
Yeah, it's not really in traffic engineers' purview per se.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wong?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Abe, for all your hard work, and I like a lot of things you just said about response to all these commissioners. So, but I do have some comments as well. So, one thing about the use of collision data as a basis for justifying lower speed limit, the thing is, if the road is already dangerous, considered dangerous by bicyclists, they're not going to ride it. For instance, I won't ride Saxony, so that will, of course, lower the collision data, and then that's sort of bad feedback because I'm not giving you incentive to make it safer by lowering the speed limit because I'm just avoiding it. But that's why I'm saying it's not a very good basis for using it. But I don't have a good solution for fixing that unless you have a poll saying, would you ride this if it were safe?
We usually, when we utilize that 5 mile per hour reduction option, we usually throw the kitchen sink in there. Like we write anything that we can. Lack of sidewalk, collision history, lack of bike lanes.
You don't have any statistics on there are 500 people who won't ride this because they don't consider it safe. That's what you can't say.
Yeah.
I don't think you can say it. You could say it, but I don't think you could justify it.
I mean, judges would want to have like objective, like verifiable, quantifiable measures. They want something that they can verify if it's correct or not. To say like a lot of people would use this if the bike lane, if the speed limit was lower, that's not really a verifiable measure.
I understand.
you know.
That's why I recognize it's not, I don't have a good solution for that.
Yeah.
So that being said, I like your plans for bike lane, and that's fine for going up to the Y, which is about 40% of the length between Encinitas and Leucadia. But when it gets narrow, you don't really have room for the bike lane if you keep allowing the parking on both sides. So, and that's also a reason why I think you say that the speed limit being 35 is probably not so reasonable where it's narrow. So that's why I'd be advocating, as you mentioned, the possibility of, if there's any possibility of eliminating parking on both sides and putting bike lanes on both sides, that would make Saxony as a real north-south corridor a safe one, where it's not. And I don't think even with your hard work, the plans you have, there just isn't enough room to do that. These sharrows are not satisfactory. It's not satisfactory for bicycles or for cars. They both hate them, actually.
No, I understand. It certainly did cross my mind when I was putting the report together and was talking to staff about options that we have here. As you know, removing parking in front of Y and in front of this business area where there's ample parking available and parking on the street is minimally utilized is very different from, taking parking away from, 50, 60 houses that are frequently using it at like 70, 80% capacity. So it's the outreach required, the type of feedback we get from the community, how council would receive that feedback and how they would want to proceed after. The concerns of coastal commission, I would not be able to cover that loss. Here, because I have a lot of red curb, I can say, okay, well, I'm removing this from here, but I'm making up for it here. But over there, if I remove parking, then I'm talking about, 80, 90 parking spaces, 100 parking spaces that certainly would require coastal approval. So there's a lot of, it's not that I'm against it. Again, I understand ATP, I understand the reasoning behind this, I understand the benefits that would come with it, but we have to consider the downside. So if that's something that is commission's position, I'll be happy to include that in my report to council.
Well, I'd certainly vote for that. I don't know whether the rest of the commission would, but I understand that limiting parking is kind of a third rail, especially near houses. But I do hope that you consider that option. And I know there will be objections from residents, but I suspect that if you really did make Saxony that much safer for bicycles, there would be a lot more bicycles than there are now. I don't think there are that many right now because it's just not that safe. I consider myself a fairly active cyclist, but I won't ride there. So please keep it on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what it takes to have you be able to say that the commission recommends no parking.
This is the avenue for it. Like if you like that idea, when we have a motion, you can include that in the motion. And if it's supported by the commission, when I take it to council, I would say this was evaluated on such stage by the commission. The commission liked these parts of the report. They didn't like these parts of the report. This was commission's opinion on this matter.
Okay.
And it would be reviewed by the council. And yeah, again, there are cases where I, as representative of the staff, have an opposition against, like the situation we had with the permit parking zone. Staff would recommend against a certain request from public. Commission would vote yes to that, and will present it to council. Staff keeps their position, and commission keeps their. This is not one of those, like, as a traffic engineer, and the fact that we have an adopted active transportation plan, I do not have anything against removal of parking. There's nothing technically against that. It's not wrong. It's not unsafe. It's not. I will present all the options to the council with commission's position.
I see. Okay, so, but basically just from a transit point of view, without considering opinions of homeowners or residents, then you'd consider eliminating the parking and putting bike lanes to be a safer transit option than leaving the parking there.
The only concern I would have there would be the increased friction with the cars parked along the edge of the road can help with lower speeds in that segment. If I eliminate all that parking and give a 36-foot wide pavement to the vehicles with bike lanes on the edges, now they have 18 feet basically. So if the bike lane utilization by the bicyclists is not that frequent, then vehicles might go a little faster because the cars that are parked on the side, usually we tend to go slower because of the doors that might open, the friction with the mirrors. That can help a lot of times with these narrow road with existing parking, especially when it's frequently used. Whereas if we just remove them and give them a wide 18-footer, 6-7 foot of it a bike lane, 10, 11-foot travel lane, a lot of time that 7-foot bike lane, when it's empty, gives that convenience to the driver that goes a little faster. That's the only
Yeah.
downside that I can see to it.
Right. Understand what door zone bike lanes are also rather problematic too.
Well, that wouldn't be a door zone anymore. I'm comparing a scenario where there is parking adjacent to a 10, 11-footer travel lane compared to converting that
Oh, I
parking
see.
lane to a
Okay.
bike lane. I'm saying
My
that the only
apologies.
downside I can see to that is when that parking lane is converted to a bike lane, it can lead to a little bit of a higher speed because that friction to the parked car is now gone.
I see, okay. So this being an action item, then, are you looking for a motion from the commission to approve your plans? And then to that is what I'd attach a recommendation to eliminate parking in the northern section.
Yeah, you can do that, and the fact that this is going to council, the fact that it was on my work plan, it has to be presented to council. Again, similar to previous cases, this is an advisory recommendation to the council. It will go to council with your advisory opinion. It can be supported staff recommendations with these changes. It can be, okay, well, thank you for what you have. We also like these things, or,
Yes.
it's basically carte blanche. Commission can.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
We
provide
are only advisory, so.
whatever you think is better for this corridor. It will, if it's what I have in the report, I will say commission like these ideas. If it's something different, I will say in these segments, commission preferred this scenario alternative.
Okay, well, whenever
Okay.
we get to that motion, then I will wish to make that attachment, along with Commissioner Gross's recommendation to eliminate the parking next to the Y.
Perfect. So thank you for your comments. Do any other commissioners have any other comments? Commissioner Thiele?
I have a quick question and a comment. How wide is that door buffer? Is it 2 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet car door buffer to the bike lane? How wide is that?
Again, in this case here, we do not have that door zone bike lane situation because there's no room for, well, the small southerly segment right south of Y, there is a small segment that is wide enough to have parking and bike lane. MUTCD, where it shows the door opening adjacent to a 8-footer parking lane, it shows a 2-footer door zone.
2 feet?
2 feet, correct. We tend to have at least 2.5 or 3 if room allows. But there were cases where we didn't have available width, so we did end up with a 2-footer door zone. There are some areas in town that we have a 2-footer door zone. It's not preferred, but it's not just the door at its full opening width. It's more to give that notice to the bicyclists that the door is being opened without hitting them. So at least in that 2-foot stretch, they see a door is being opened. So that's, I guess, why METCD, because most doors are a little wider than 2 feet.
Yeah,
But METCD, when it shows the exhibit of a door zone, it does show 2.
right, right. And you had one suggestion in here for sharrows towards the north end. And generally, when you propose to utilize a sharrow, do you think it's effective to put a sharrow in as as an effective way to accommodate the cyclist and a car?
Well, technically speaking, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, CVC does allow using the travel lane wherever a bike lane is not present. So you can use, I guess the only places like freeways you're not allowed to on Caltrans right away.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like Sharrow really adds a fundamental change to the usage of the lane for bicyclists. The major difference is that you're notifying drivers that you should expect bicyclists on this road. Don't be surprised if you see somebody in the middle of the lane. And we luckily have very good drivers in San Diego County in general, but a lot of times when drivers are in a rush, in a hurry, they don't like to see bicyclists. When the Sharrow is not there, they feel like they're allowed to honk the horn or try to communicate in a bad manner with a bicyclist. That Sharrow kind of prevents that. It kind of tells them, hey, they're allowed to be here, be respectful, don't get too close. How effective it is, again, that's a different story, but these are the minor benefits of the Sharrow. It's not huge if that's what.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see more Sharrows in the city, especially on the Coast Highway, and I think it's more effective with consistency. So, if you take the stretch, Saxony, for example, if the cars know that there's going to be Sharrow from Encinitas Boulevard to Leucadia, I would think they would expect that, just as they do on the Coast Highway, in long stretches of the Coast Highway. But that's just my comment. Of course, it ultimately depends on the driver and if they respect the Sharrow or they don't. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Thiele. Do you have anybody else?
Just one last comment. Is there any possibility that, I was asking you about the right-of-way, so the city owns a consistent swath through Saxony. If we needed to carve out like 5 feet, move the curb about 5 feet, is that like something that's really difficult to do, or is that something we can explore?
I mean, similar to many other roads in the city pretty much 90% plus of the roads, even maybe 98% of the roads, the city has a right-of-way. When it comes to widening, it becomes a whole different animal where, you go from a $50,000 project to a $5 million, $2 million project. The cost of widening of a road is nowhere in the limited annual funds that the traffic engineering gets. Our budget, we have like 4 or 5 different accounts. They're usually within like $75,000, $150,000, $200,000. I think all of my accounts, like the ones that are at the traffic engineering discretion, and they're not even like 100% discretionary. They each have its own title, like bike innovations, safe routes to school, safety and calming. Like they have its own title and description. All of them combined is, I think, around like 600,000 or something. All of my annual. So it's not like we can't do it. It's certainly doable. The right-of-way is there. I mean, similar to La Costa. I mean, the road has been sitting there, and we have the right-of-way. It's just creating a whole new road there would cost millions. And it's just with all these other projects that we have the IGA roundabout, we have Vulcan. There are a lot of projects there. We have the Verde undercrossing. There's a lot of projects that each need multi-million-dollar fundings, and to create a new project that would require several $1 million, I don't think it's going to be a
Yeah,
viable
I just
option.
think a continuous bike path would be, kind of the approach you want to take.
Yeah, I mean, look at this for widening here. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would entail, to get this to the 40 feet wide. Like, this is a 30, I think a 38. Like, in this residential area, I mean, this one looks like a newer project. This is probably where the city right-of-way is at here. This is the actual, because this wall is new. So pretty much everybody has to, this fence is probably not new. So this is, mostly in these older areas of the city, when you find a property that was recently remodeled, that wall would show you where the edge of the right-of-way is at, because those walls are usually built per.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do agree. I think a continuous bike lane down Saxony would be the most ideal situation. I think a couple points were made. I know that you had said that Saxony is not really a super active area for bicycles, and the reason that maybe it's not as active as it could be is because it is not safe. However, James and I do live in this neighborhood, and there are a lot of parents and kids that are trying to ride their bicycles to the Y. And so, in fact, there was a mom I think her kids are now much older, but she used to ride her triplets in the most amazing bicycle I've ever seen down Leucadia Boulevard and onto Saxony with a cart in front. And she did it for years and years. And I was always impressed because she was on her bike and I was in my car, even though it's not that far away, because it is not safe to get there. So, I think, again, with that motto, if we build it, they will come. If we give a safe route here, people will get on their bikes and they will pick up their shoes and they will walk there because it is a safe path of mobility. I like everything you did. Thank you so much. I have a quick question for the sheriff because I really like the roundabouts, and I think that if the new law doesn't come into effect, I think it would be really fabulous if we could lower the speed limit to 25. And I do know that when we put roundabouts in, it does slow traffic, and then we can do a new speed data survey, and if the speed limit is lower, we can lower the speed limit. So I know that Commissioner Gross had said he was concerned about having roundabouts at, with a 35 mile an hour traffic speed limit. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hopefully as people approach, they'll slow down on North 101. I believe it's 30 miles per hour through there. And they slow down as they approach the roundabouts. So I think if we couldn't do it simultaneously, reduce the speed and put the roundabouts in, the next best thing to do would be to get those roundabouts in and then do the speed survey.
Okay, so great. So you're thinking that would be an okay idea. You're not concerned for public safety?
Not at all, no. The speeds in this area are, my opinion is they are high for that type of area. But I've written a lot of tickets along this stretch, and but speed is not excessive per the speed limit, but I think personally it's excessive for that type of area. The road really is narrow at the north end, and then you have the, of course, the Y and the senior center there. So I think 35 for me is too high, and it's hard to actually write tickets on the other end.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know exactly how you'd even have space to write a ticket.
And is there still a senior zone in that area as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, there is, which I think that was a great implementation of the city engineering department, because I think that really did help lower speed limits. I don't know what it was before, but I know it was much higher in that area, and then that came in, and that I feel it is slower and safer there, just as a personal, feeling, which, everybody has their own feeling when they're on the roads, but I do feel that it has slowed down. So thank you for that input. I do like the idea of those roundabouts as a frequent runner of this area, which I don't do it that often because it is so terrifying. I think adding that roundabout in front of the Leitchtag will help get from one side where there's that kind of safe path in front of Leitchtag. You can use that roundabout to then cross to the sidewalk that's in front of the Y area. So I think that could improve walking mobility. So I like that. I personally think that we should remove all of the parking along this entire road and just put in bike lanes. But I also realize that down by the neighborhood, that might not be that popular or supported at all. And I do know that there are a lot of people there that are constantly parking. And what the solution is, I agree that, the city owns that right-of-way. And, if we could reclaim it somehow, it would be fabulous, but I understand the financial constraints are there. So I support all of your proposals for Saxony. I would also like to suggest that we include in it removing the parking that's right in front of Saxony, right in front of, because there's plenty of parking there, and if anybody is going into the Y, there's no need to park there. So just to open that up for the cyclists that are trying to get in and out and improve mobility there. I also would like to include maybe somehow in our motion that this commission, if everybody does support it, would prefer to remove parking on the north end of Saxony, and we would prefer to have 2 Class 2 bike lanes down there instead of Sharrows, but, so that would be our preference, but we support your Sharrows because right now it's not marked, and I think it is dangerous for cyclists coming around that corner. Cars don't have the notification that bikes should be in that lane, even though there is a bike lane on Leucadia Boulevard that just ends. So I am in support of putting Sharrows, but I would prefer removing the parking that starts at, Abe, would you mind pulling up the map? It's not Puebla, but what
I think
is
it's
that?
Poinsettia.
Well, I was looking on the streets that are on the east, on the north side is easier for me to see. It's not,
So the one that shows parking is easier. So it starts somewhere around here.
oh yeah, no, I was thinking on the south end. I'm lying to you, on the north end. Yeah, what is the road that's right after Puebla?
Right after Puebla.
So just start at Leucadia Boulevard and move down, how about
So
that?
Puebla is Poinsettia. This one is
Oh,
Poinsettia.
okay, so, yeah, it's Poinsettia, but, no, that's Ecke Road. I need to just, I guess I would prefer to remove all of the parking on the north end of the road up to where the sidewalk starts, but I feel like, could you go to Google Maps, would you mind? Please. Thank you. Just so that I could say the street that I was thinking of. It's like those. And just drop us in right at Leucadia Boulevard and, yeah. So see, there you go. You come around the corner, you've got sidewalks on both sides. And it's red curbed. And then it comes around and keep going, yeah. So there is walking a little bit on the right side. Yep, keep going, keep going. I mean, you can kind of see a little bit of walking there, but then cars just park in it. Okay, keep going, please. Okay, and so that street right there is that Sidonia?
Yes.
Okay, so then keep going. What is the next one on the left? I think, yes.
So this wall, I think, is new. You can see the
Yeah.
edge, a wide edge area that we
But I'm
have.
also not sure they permitted that, not to be honest. A lot of that happens unless it's actual construction on the house. A lot of these are not being permitted. That one might be right there, where that one was set way back.
This one is even further in, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe this is the correct one.
Well, you can see, yeah. So there, and then, you know, you've got some red curb because there's bus stops on either side. Okay, is that, and that's Puebla.
This is Puebla, yeah.
And that's where then the sidewalk starts on that street. Yeah. I just think if parking was maybe even just not allowed from Leucadia Boulevard to Sedonia. Yeah,
Go, see the end there where you have the, you can't go past it?
yeah.
It's just narrow enough that you can't get your cargo bike through it. So you have to go up on the side, and it's clear where everyone goes up on the side with their bike if you go down that road, Abe. And then they're basically that, the neighbor who's probably on a right-of-way, like all that stripping is like cracked, and you have to go in those sandy pebbles, and you see all the bike routes. And so if you could just shave us like 6 inches on each side, because a ton of bike, I mean, you can, that pebbled area is all bike trails, and then those are cobblestones that are all cracked because people hit them with their bikes. So if we get like 6 more inches, you could get a bike through there, no problem, but you can't otherwise.
Yeah.
Right, that's just
No,
a-
no,
that's
no,
small
and I
recommendation.
guess as we think about this, I mean, should we just address, people are gonna come through this way and then make it safe on
100%,
Saxony?
that's what I'm saying. Like, I
Yeah.
don't even think you mess with Leucadia and Saxony if you're, I mean, of course, if you don't know, you do. But if you know to go the back route.
Right.
Because, from that direction, because it's too dangerous otherwise.
Right, so then I guess from Puebla south,
Yes.
it would be really great to have 2 dedicated bike lanes, is that what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if there's like, I mean, you saw it in the street view. For some reason, like, no one picks up their trash cans. So those are always just in the street too. So you're dodging the trash cans constantly.
I
Like,
think,
look at the trash cans. They're just like everywhere.
I know,
Why are you saying
know,
stop
but-
at Puebla? Just go all the way to Leucadia.
I think if you can, but that's where you have, I think that's where you have the residents that are gonna put the huge fight, where
We're talking about what we would like right now, and I think you should have
Oh, sure.
good, safe biking all the way from Leucadia to Encinitas.
well, I think what James is saying is that if you can cut down Puebla and get through the back ways, which,
Why should we have to do that?
You shouldn't have to. I think I'm just being realistic with the idea that there's no residential uproar once you get to Puebla. This is constantly crowded and narrower. So, but I would love it too. I'm not disagreeing. But I don't see anyone having an issue with those bike lanes south of Puebla at all, other than the people that leave their trash cans out there all day.
okay, perfect.
You're coming
So-
from the west, though.
Yeah, correct. I'm coming from the north, right? So if people are coming from the north, they would be going that route.
If you're coming from the east, down Leucadia, you
Northeast,
don't want to
yeah.
go down all the way to Puebla and come back.
People do it, but yes, that's correct.
I do see your point. I definitely see your point. Abe, where right now are you showing that the 2 dedicated Class 2 bike lanes are stopping? At which street? Can you get them all the way to Puebla?
I think it was up to Saxony Place.
Okay, and can we just see how that compares? Because I think it would be great, and we will still put that we would like, that's our hope and our goal, but if we could get them at least safe to Puebla, then all of the moms and dads that are riding their kids from all of our neighborhoods to the preschool at the Y, and then my older neighbors that are riding their e-bikes because they're retired to do yoga. I mean, there's a lot of people, and I get it, I hear you, Commissioner Wong, and we'll put that in there as well, but if we could
It's
also
basically
just,
around the leash tag entrance. It's where after leash tag is where it narrows down to 36, and then the parking starts to appear.
okay, so can we,
Yeah, so this is the
but
leash
see,
tag
that's red
entrance.
curbed, right?
Yeah, but this is just this one. Then after this, we don't have any no parking, and this is basically parking allowed. Now,
But
nobody
nobody
uses.
really parks there. I don't know. There is rarely anybody parked there.
Yeah, if we
I'm-
go off of utilization, we probably can go up to Puebla.
Okay, that would be my goal.
But
I
then
would-
the whole coastal thing would come in, so that would need a little bit of, because we would technically be removing parking.
Yes, but again, or could we, I mean, can't you just, I guess you can't paint a bike lane unless it's red curbed? Because you can't park in a bike lane.
I don't need a red curb. If I put bike lane, that's basically parking removal. We
Okay.
don't do red curbing where we have bike
Okay.
lane.
Okay, so good. Nobody is parking there right now, so I guess if you did a survey, you would see for Coastal Commission. Also, nobody is parking there and walking to the beach, so I don't know why Coastal Commission would be, first of all, you're gonna die, and it's a long way, and so I don't know why Coastal Commission would get a say who's parking in the middle of Saxony and walking to the beach. That's never happening, ever. But I like your plan a lot. I would like to make a motion, which I'm never good at these, so maybe somebody else can step in and help me. Here's what I'm gonna start with. I make a motion that we accept all of the recommendations in this proposal with the addition of creating the Class 2 bike lane, extending it all the way to Puebla. From Encinitas Boulevard all the way up to Puebla, Class 2 bike lanes, removing the parking in front of the YMCA. And, what do you get, and if possible, what do you want to say, Commissioner Wong?
I agree with everything you said, except I said just leave out the part about stopping at Puebla. If they feel like they can't do that, then they can figure out they have an option there. But I don't want to see an interrupted bike lane, because one that just stops is not pleasant.
I hear you, but I feel like what we're asking for is moving it even further than it is in the current plan. And we can say that we would also like parking removed on the south end and a Class 2 bike lane the entire way, if possible, instead of a Sharrow.
Why not just leave it, have a Class 2 bike lane all the way, and forget the part about Puebla? Because that is kind of a.
My point is,
interrupted bike lane.
I'm fine with that. I think that's good. I wouldn't hate to say, oh, the residents won't like that, and, we have to kill the whole thing. Where I think there's a pretty good use case that if we could compromise, but I understand if you want to, if you feel that way, that's.
I'm sure there's going to be compromises anyway, and they're not going to give us what we want anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
So we may as well ask for it.
Commissioner Johnson here. I like that plan. I'm worried that the drivers are going to see the bike lane as making their road wider, giving them more space. And I would like to see something that calms them down so they don't have to think that this is a racetrack.
I think in that section, they're putting 2 roundabouts.
The
where
roundabouts
Where those
are-
bike lanes
The
are.
roundabouts are necessary.
Yes, thank you. So I think that's what in my motion, I was saying all of Abe's things, which were included the roundabouts, the Sharrow, the Class 2 bike lanes, up to Puebla. And if possible, remove the parking and create a Class 2 bike lane the entire stretch. Did you get that, Amanda? Okay.
Can you just add bike access through Puebla? We just need like 6 inches.
Oh, and add bike access through Puebla. I don't know. I feel like you just need to go out there with your Sawzall, James.
At midnight.
I'm sorry, but
Yes.
maybe in the dark, just pull off Sawzall? I've got one.
Okay, I do object to the section about Puebla, but I also would like to suggest that the Commissioner, your suggestion about using the bike lane as an extra wide parking lane, we could put those plastic pylons as they are in Acadia Boulevard. There are some plastic pylons there, which would deter people from using it as a wide lane. So I don't know whether we can cram that into the motion as well.
Yeah, or some type of curb, like what we have in 101, where there's, just an asphalt curb. I think that would help.
That goes from a class 2, what is that called when you have a divided, is that a class?
Yeah, not to go too far into it, because of the number of driveways that we have over there, any kind of physical barrier would cause a lot of trouble for residents getting access to their driveways. And we would have to put one bollard, and then for 100 feet, you won't have another 2 bollards, and then another 50 feet, nothing. So it would be a very weird, usually when you have all these driveways, the protection really doesn't work for bicyclists. And also MUTCD does not allow putting bollards where you don't have a buffer, and there's no room really to have a wide enough buffer to add these bollards. So I won't go as far as creating any kind of a class 4 facility with bollards. But the way I understood the motion is to try to take the bike lane as far north as possible, with elimination of parking even as necessary. That's how I see it, and that's how I would present it to council. I know, because the process would be the same. We would be eliminating parking up to Puebla. It would be less neighborhood, I guess, negative feedback. North of that would be obviously a bigger undertaking. And that I would present it the same way. I would say commission like to eliminate parking along the stretch. Up to Puebla, probably a little easier because parking utilization is a little less. We'll probably survey it a few days and a few nights and show to council how utilized the parking is, especially during the nights. That shows us the actual demand, and go from there and see how council wants to make a decision.
Okay, perfect. I'm really comfortable with that. Commissioner Wong, do you like that?
Yes.
Okay,
That's a
good.
compromise.
Good, great compromise. Thank you so much, Abe. That's fabulous. Okay, Amanda, you have that? I'm so glad you're back, because I was really struggling without you here writing these things down.
Motion?
Yes, I've made that motion. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. And let's hear it.
Sorry. Okay. Support staff recommendation with the modification to extend the Class 2 bike lane as far north as possible, and if possible, eliminate parking in the entire segment
If needed.
if needed, and increase bike access on Puebla. Is that
Yeah,
what that?
yes, and I think the only other thing we wanted to add in there was we specifically want to remove the parking that is in front of the YMCA.
So that piece is a piece that we will have either parking on the east or west one side, but then there is enough room to have the bike lane and door zone buffer and everything. So I'm not sure if the parking will end up on the west or east. If it ends up on the west side, we will have more parking in front of Y, but then there will be enough room for a door zone buffer, a bike lane, and a buffer. So we won't necessarily need to get rid of that parking if we have enough room for a door zone buffer and a bike lane and buffer in both directions.
Okay, I just want to make sure Commissioner Gross is okay with this, because I guess you will have a bike lane which wasn't there before. So,
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I would think the majority of traffic is on the west side, just because even the way people cross over, if they're coming from the east side around that area. So I think it creates additional conflict to try to put parking on the Y side.
So you think east would be better?
I believe it'd be better just for the amount of traffic that's on the west versus east side there. But that's just an opinion. I'm not.
okay. So do we need to modify it, or can we'll just let the motion stand, and you'll figure out which side to put traffic
Yeah,
on?
I'll do more
And then
surveys
if
and
it
I'll
comes
figure.
back, yeah, you'll do a survey?
To figure out which side is more utilized and.
Okay, that's great. So we have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry, Amanda, you want to read it one more time for us, please?
Support staff recommendation with the modification to extend the Class 2 bike lane as far north as possible, and if needed, eliminate parking in the entire segment and increase bike access on Puebla.
Okay, great. So I made the motion, and then I think it shows on here Commissioner Wong seconded that, or was it Commissioner Johnston? I thought Commissioner Johnston seconded it. Okay, can we have a vote on the motion if we're ready?
Just one moment.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0. And thank you, everybody, and thank you for all the input from traffic engineer and from our sheriff. I really appreciate your thoughts on that. Okay, so next, we are on to 7B, which is the Encinitas Traffic Management Program. And I am guessing that traffic engineer Bannigan has a presentation for us.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yeah, this is a relatively old program that the city, I think, adopted in 2008, 9. I think we had a history on this in the earlier, maybe it's in my report. But this program, long time ago, was commissioned by the city, 2005. Commission reviewed it and then later approved by the city council. So about 20 years ago. At that point, the idea was to create a process where residents would like to see traffic calming measures implemented in the neighborhood, how they start the program, and how they request these measures be added to the work plan and be implemented and funded later on. The process was when I started, we implemented it once or twice. It was a very, very sophisticated process. It had a very, very complicated, I don't have the old flow chart here. It was a very complicated flow chart. It was reviewed on 2 occasions by the commission, not this commission, but like last time, I think it was year and a half ago. Once it was like 4 years ago, and then the last time was 1.5 years ago, our commission provided us directions on revisit the program, make it more simpler, more easy to implement, more easy to follow, and then we received the council direction after the second time commission reviewed this, to revisit this program. What we put together is a new Encinitas. We removed the word neighborhood because I don't think traffic calming should really be in one neighborhood. It's more a citywide approach. You cannot just calm traffic at a location and then leave everywhere else. It's like a whole evaluation of the corridor in general, evaluation of different intersections. So we named it Encinitas Traffic Management Program. The new handbook that basically is the new version is a lot simpler. Purpose, obviously, traffic calming, traffic management. Eligibility criteria is any road that's residential, any road that meets the criteria for a residential or business district per CVC. So it's not just if it's 25-mile-an-hour road, like a roadway like Saxony would qualify because it does meet the residential criteria of California Vehicle Code. And also, as said, we have the option of City Council authorizing implementation of ETMP on other higher speed roads as needed. So this is how the neighborhood would approach the city, would submit a petition. Hey, we have concerns over safety. We want this evaluated. So we have 3 tiers of traffic management that can be implemented. First tier is education and enforcement. We would provide the necessary education material, if it needs presentation, if it needs attending community meetings at the schools, at different facilities that need education, we'll do that. We'll ask our sheriff's office for help if there is a need for enforcement. So that's our first measure. There is a 3-month period where we implement these measures and we review, we analyze, we evaluate the before and after situation. If not effective, and there are effectiveness measures, there is a speed 85th percentile. If it's 5 miles over the speed limit of the roadway, we implement tier 1. If it's 7 miles or over, we implement tier 2 after. These are more or less measures that are less cost prohibitive with the limited funds that the division has available. As I mentioned earlier, we have a few accounts that we can implement some simpler measures such as pavement legends, speed legends on the ground, adding new speed limit signs if they're not there on the roadway, adding speed radar feedback signs, RFBs, and speed cushions or speed tables. So these are measures that we can implement using our existing policies. For each one of these, we have our own internal city-approved and commission-approved policies. Some of these even have council-approved policy, like the speed cushion has a council-approved policy. So if it gets to the second tier, we follow our approved policies and implement these measures. Which road can get a RFB, which road can get a pavement legend, a radar feedback sign, does it qualify for a speed cushion? So right now, a resident can automatically submit a petition for a speed cushion without going through anything else. The new program would basically include, and interestingly, our current speed cushion program is called the first tier speed cushion program. The reason for that is when the old ENTMP was drafted, city staff at that point, after a few years, found that it's so complicated to process that program that it's better to give people a simple, faster approach, easier to implement measures. So they created the speed cushion program to bypass that complicated process of the ENTMP, and they called it first tier speed cushion. So if we do speed cushion, we don't need to follow that program. Now we incorporated that speed cushion program as a measure in our tier 2. So we have other options in our tier 2. We have a speed radar feedback sign, we have pavement legends, speed limit signs, and other stuff. And then the roadway is evaluated 6 months, 12 months after implementing the tier 2 measures. If it's still not effective and the 85th comes back another 7 miles over, that's where tier 3 kicks in. And there are a lot of measures in the tier 3 which are included in the toolbox: chicanes, road narrowings, bulb outs, a lot of other factors that can be implemented using the tier 3. The difference is the tier 3 needs to be included in the division's work plan proposal for the city council, because the assumption is those third tier measures would require a lot of funding that is not in the available budgets of the division to implement. Information about the petition, about how we collect data, and the 3 tiers of traffic management. I assume commissioners have. Most of these already have their own policies. It's just where they line up in the new ETMP of the city. And then the third tier and this is a simple flow chart of what I just explained. Is the roadway eligible? We would not accept a petition on El Camino Real for a resident to come in and say, well, I want speed radar feedback sign here. That's a different situation. That's a classified road. We involve the residents, obviously. We communicate with them. We collect data. 85th is over 5 miles over the speed limit. If it is, we implement first tier, collect the speed data after 3 months. Is it resolved or not? If it's not resolved, if it's 7 miles over, now we do a second tier, implement our policies, we check our internal funding availability. Fire department reviews both second tier and third tier, approves the second tier, third tier measures, collect the speed data after 12 months, another round of review. If it needs to go to third tier, hopefully not. If it needs, then comes the design. Similar to like Saxony and Quail, these would be basically third tier measures that would require additional funding and schedule for implementation. This is the new simplified ETMP. Obviously, this is just the first iteration. I do see this being built upon in the next versions. I can see this every 6 to 9 months kind of be improved and getting more comprehensive with better coverage. but I think it's a good starting point to get rid of that old program that nobody really could implement. With that, I'm open to questions.
Okay, thank you for presenting this. Commissioners, anybody have questions? Who would like to begin? Commissioner Johnston?
Yes. What are the next steps with this? This is a draft.
This was, I'm not sure if the file that we have, Amanda, here, is this the version that we initially added to the commissioner's agenda package, or no, this is the final version? It just has the draft stamp on it? Okay. No, after this, it would be, with whatever input I receive from the commission, will go to council for adoption.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Anybody else? Other commissioners? Commissioner Gross?
Yeah, maybe just in practical terms here, Abe. So I think, the residents I've talked to and the concerns they have with the current system is, in the case of, like, say, speed cushions, they're expected to collect signatures, 2 sets of signatures, 1 set for a speed study, and then a set for, actually wanting the cushions. That goes into a bit of a black box. And then the answers come back in a bit of a black box way too. Oftentimes it's the fire department review that seems to be the most of the black box. And my concern's always been, we put a lot of onus on the residents to do all this, and then there's not a lot of transparency on the side of the city as to why it can or can't be done, with the idea that it seems like the fire department review is often discretionary, meaning there's no standard set by, so the community could review like, oh, this is why the fire department's saying we can't do this. And therefore, maybe wouldn't do it in the first place. Or they petition for the fire department to change their routes or, how they move through the city. So are we improving that at all? Because that's where I see a big concern, where I think increasingly residents, I can only speak to Leucadia, but no sidewalks, no speed bumps, mostly pass-through areas, living next to the 5, which is one of the fastest and largest freeways in the world. So I see a lot of residents that are concerned about trying to slow things down, and I don't see a very good program in place that provides transparency and a sense of when something might actually be done. So does this improve that? And if so, how?
So one advantage of this program is it does incorporate measures that our fire department has a lot more acceptance, has been receptive to those historically that are currently, right now, residents only ask for a speed cushion, that's basically it. But with this, there are a lot of other options that we can add the speed radar feedback sign, add a pavement legend 25s on a residential road, add new speed limit signs that we don't have there. There are a lot of measures that our fire department is open to. With regards to the first part of your question about the need for submitting a petition, that has always been the case. It's not that hard. It's only 10 signatures to initiate a program. A lot of time, the reason that we ask for that is we do not want to get to a point where it needs a neighborhood vote and it's shut down and a lot of time is wasted. That 10 signature kind of shows if the neighborhood has that overall feel for the need for change. When it gets to the speed cushion program, that's a council approved and I think a commission approved program that 50% of the neighborhood should vote for it. So I don't have any authority to override that. I have to send out ballots and I have to receive neighborhood votes on it. That's with the petition. So to initiate this and to study a roadway, I only need a petition with 10 signatures, which is pretty easy. With regards to fire department's approval, that's something that I cannot change. I do not have the authority. The state fire code that was adopted by the city council says every traffic calming device shall be approved or should be approved by the fire marshal. That's in the code and it's approved. They have been considerate enough to accept many of our traffic calming measures like the lane narrowing options that we do or speed radar feedback signs. A lot of these devices are technically traffic calming devices, but they have given us carte blanche to implement all these without their approval because they understand that they can go with the speed that they need to do a good emergency response, to provide a fast emergency response, and those really minimally impact them. But when it comes to vertical deflection, the fact that it definitely impacts their response time, they still kept that veto card with themselves, which is fair because obviously though we all have family, we want when it comes to emergency response for them. How that decision is made, as you said, it's discretionary at the moment. They are trying to come back with a quantifiable measure, with some sort of objective measure to show which areas of town is easier. Obviously, very high severity fire zones, those are an absolute no. There are other areas of town like Saxony, they say because of the senior residents there, because of why we frequently cover emergency cases there, so we cannot accept any vertical measure. They have their fair evaluation process. If residents ask, we connect them to our fire marshal. He's very responsive. He provides he always contacts his captains and battalion chiefs to when it comes to a location evaluation. But yeah, to me, I probably can try to ask for some sort of a map to attach to this, that in these areas, I think this was brought up before. I feel like not having that map is to our advantage as a traffic division, because if they want to generate a map, they would be very conservative to eliminate a lot of roads, whereas in some cases, on a case-by-case basis, they might accept a certain calming measure. So it might be better for us to keep it at their discretion and just ask for a case-by-case evaluation. But I do understand you. I do get it. We had cases where residents, after evaluation is conducted, fire says no. So these days we do it a little better. We from the get-go go talk to fire before even collecting data, not to put the residents in a disappointing loop per se, to finish evaluation and then fire says no, over my dead body you put a cushion here. Like, we don't want to get to that situation.
Okay, yeah. So much of this is just about the, some of the initial things that can be done before we get to the speed cushions, that currently there's just no kind of real process for the
Correct.
speed zone. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Questions, input? Okay, I have a couple questions. So my first one was, when I was reading through it, it said that, again, residents would need to sign a petition, and it said 10 residents, but it didn't specify. I know currently, I think they have to be living on that street. Does that still hold true, or is it just any resident in the area? So if you want speed cushions on, Eolis, then you have to live on Eolis? Is that the,
That's our assumption, which I think is fair. I mean,
okay.
because when it comes to gathering votes, we gather votes from the residents off that road.
Okay, sure. I get that. It just didn't specify that in here, so I just was thinking maybe that it needed to say 10 residents of the street in question or the street that's being studied. And then my other one, I have a couple more. It says on roadways with speed limits greater than 25, which I think you were discussing this, like Saxony, it says the roadways should meet the residential and business district criteria of the California Vehicle Code to qualify for the ETM program. What is that code? Are you going to link it to this document so that people can see it? Is there, I just didn't know what that code was. So for, Saxony or Quail Gardens or whatever it is.
It's more general than that. It doesn't specify a street name. The way the code is written, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to give you the wrong number, but I think it's 22 units of business or property, residential property in a quarter mile, and it has like on both sides, and on one side there's a different number, but it gives you a quantifiable measure if this roadway can be classified as a residential district. If there are this many houses in one side or total of houses on both sides, it's this many. Similarly with the business district. So any road per se can meet that quality.
Okay. I just was wondering if you could either link that in the document so that residents could see that, or if
We can
there's
add it as a footprint or some sort of a.
something, just so people can figure out where to get that information. One of the options, as you scroll through this, you have, as you go, well, first of all, before we go any further, I love the flow chart, Abe. Thank you. it is really great. I like the colors. It really is a great flow chart. I'm a flow chart person. So thank you. Great visual. As you go through the different things that can be implemented, many roundabouts, I really liked all of the different solutions with one exception. You have on there, one of the options would be a street closure. And I just feel like having a street closure listed as one of the options is just something we shouldn't even propose. I just feel like it's always inequitable, because if you close a street, for example, Puebla was closed years ago, and what that does is it deflects all of the traffic in that neighborhood out other streets. You know, Clark Street is very impacted. So I know that that was something that the city did implement, but I'm not really in favor of it. So I don't know, is that something that has to be left in this document as one of the options? I mean, I guess, you know, anything can happen, but I would prefer that, I just don't think that's equitable. So,
No, I mean, we try to add the language, as you say, emphasize that it's very rare and it's impacting other, I mean, pretty much everything you said is included in there. The fact that it has happened in the city, I think there are 2 or 3 cases like that. We have Crest, we have Puebla, we have, I think, another location.
yep, over by Oak Crest, it's closed off by the school there so that cars cannot go through. Maybe our sheriff knows the name of that street, but there's a, anyway.
Yeah. There's a small
Or
one
not
end
Oak
of
Crest, it's
Requesa.
Degaino, pardon me, Degaino.
Yeah, so personally, as a traffic engineer, I don't like it. It's not like it's my preference. No, I do not like the idea of disconnecting a roadway. It is in our Muni code as an option for the city council. They are allowed to do that. I mean, many of the measures, I'm sure, when you looked at the toolbox, many of them are very, very rare options.
Okay,
I'm fine. I mean, I don't see myself ever proposing this to commission or council. It's just many toolboxes and many cities have this option.
I know. I think it's not you proposing it, it's that residents will come in and ask for this, which,
Yeah, I mean, if it's commission's suggestion to take it off, I can, yeah, I'll happily. remove it.
that's just a concern I have. Part 5 is blank in this document. Was there a reason when you go through Part 5, there's nothing in Part 5, at least the one I had?
I think it's the appendices. Is that it, Amanda? Yeah.
I don't know. If you keep scrolling, you'll see. It says Part 5, and there's nothing in Part
I don't
5.
have a table of content. This one?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
all of those things were just,
Yeah, these are all attached to the report.
okay.
So they are appendices.
Okay,
So yeah, 5-1. So each one, there's
So-
well, this is a draft one.
so I
think
guess
that-
it just wasn't attached in ours, but you will put it in? I thought I went all the way to the end. Maybe I didn't, but I
Yeah,
didn't.
this PDF, they are blank, but each one of these has its own policy that I thought was attached to the agenda package. So each one of these programs, speed cushion, street light, flashing stop signs,
Yeah.
for each one, we have a policy.
Right.
The majority, I think pretty much all of them were reviewed and approved at some point by commission. So which road gets a share, which road can get a flashing stop sign? Where do we do like the crosswalks were reviewed just recently, like 3-4 months ago
Yeah.
by commission. So
Yes,
each one
I
of
guess-
these, there is a policy.
I just was trying to read the policies, and they weren't in there, so
Okay.
I didn't. I just thought I'd point that out, that they need to be added.
Yeah, the one time we tried to post the agenda 6 days in advance, we
I
messed
know,
up.
thank you, and you did, I really appreciated it, getting there in advance.
So you get to choose whether we post 6 days in advance and they're missing stuff, or we post Thursday and it's good.
I understand. Okay, I had two other questions / comments. What is a pavement legend, Abe? Can you define that?
Any time you re-emphasize or emphasize more a regulatory sign on a side of a road on the ground with marking it. Like if
Okay.
you have a speed limit sign that says 25, when you put the 25
Okay.
on the ground.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wasn't sure because you kept saying, you said that that was one of
Street
the
legend.
options, and I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. And then my last one circles back to Commissioner Gross and his concern about the lack of transparency when things are kicked back from fire, which, of course, we all understand that this can happen, but I just was wondering if there could be, if they kick it back, could we have a policy in here? Because I know it says on your flow chart multiple times, fire department review, and could we put in there, you know, fire department review and provide written comments or something to that effect, just so that the residents can read the, you know, I don't want to say written report because that might be too much for the fire department, but if it's not approved, maybe that's what we could do, another little flow chart. If they approve it, then no need, but if it's not approved, then provide a written report as to why it's not approved so that the residents can just have something to look back on and go, this is why it wasn't approved. Because you know, the black hole of, it's just not approved. And that way, too, the city has some documentation to then email to the residents when they've, you know, put in the time to collect the signatures. So that's my last suggestion or thought. Any other commissioners? Okay, and do you think that's something that could be included?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, I wrote it down. If you want to make a motion, it's adding residential and business district info per CVC into the program, a removal of the street closure measure from the toolbox, and inclusion of the need for fire department written response in cases of rejection.
Excellent. I move to approve all of this with those,
With what Abe said.
yeah, with what Abe just said, with those additions.
That.
Great. Can we have a vote then? Please, Amanda?
Commissioner Wong?
I did.
Sure. That sounds great. Thank you. Thanks for writing them down. Okay, the motion passes 7-0. And next is is number 8. Thank you, everybody. That was great. And thank you for that new plan. Traffic engineer,
Bandigan.
I got it here phonetically.
Bandigan?
Yes, Bandigan. I don't know why, that's just a tongue twister for me tonight. Okay, and so next up is number 8, City Traffic Engineer Report. I think letter A is our safety and mobility project updates. So maybe we can all just look at that and see if anybody has any questions.
The big update obviously here is the cycle track phase 2 is pretty much complete. As anticipated, we're getting a lot of positive and negative comments from our residents and users.
In fact, I did have some comments on that. I don't know whether it's appropriate to do it now or in one of the later sections. Mr. Corner or?
I mean, if it's going to
log.
lead to some sort of action from our side, I would recommend doing it during the Commissioner Corner to add it to the log. If it's just observations or information only, you can do it now. But if you want us to do something about it, I think Commissioner Corner might be better.
Okay, well, it's kind of a question which may
Oh,
lead
okay.
to action, so.
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
can be
let's
easily-
talk about it, and then if it leads to something that you would like action for it, then we can rediscuss it at Commission.
Okay, could I give you,
Yeah, yeah.
PowerPoint? I hope this works.
Figure it
There's a PDF that doesn't work, so. So basically what I do is give you a little tour of going southbound on the cycle track. although I have about eight figures, but really only need to show you like one or two to get you an idea of what I'm concerned about. And it's.
Yes, I'm just feeling like maybe this should be Commissioner's Corner, since what are you thinking?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Either way, we can
Okay,
talk about it.
okay.
Okay, that's fine.
I just feel like, because it's a presentation, so, and then a discussion, right? So maybe,
It's not really a presentation, but I have some, few, never mind. We'll wait till Commissioner.
okay, okay. I just feel like that's a good plan. Okay, so, sorry. Commissioner, Engineer Bannigan, would you like to continue?
Yeah, no, nothing really. I mean, as you recall, on these two update items, if commissioners have a question, we'll go over the question. Otherwise, it's just for information only. I didn't detect the flash drive. We have anything for my team?
Kieran?
And I just had a question about the Eolis roundabout, because I thought that it was ready to go, and then I ran into one of our planning commissioners, and she informed me that something happened, and now the traffic circle on Eolis is not happening, so I just was, or it's just been delayed. So can you give us an update, please?
Correct, yeah. No, the same plan, nothing has changed. It's just a minor hiccup being the end of the fiscal year. The contractor that we had that would do this for us, we kind of ran out of construction authority. We could not utilize them until July. So there is a little bit of a legal complication with regards to using the contractor. Other than that, no. The funding is there. The project is as it was. It will shift to 3 months observation, reevaluation, and then the permanent features will be presented to council.
Okay, good. So you're going to shift it, put it in, and then after we evaluate, then it'll be permanent features?
Correct.
Okay, fabulous. Okay. Any other questions about what is on this document, commissioners? Okay. Then shall we go to,
Log.
Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission log?
So here are two items that I was supposed to provide updates to the commission. One was the Hygeia roundabout and the at-grade crossing updates, items 53 and 58. With the Hygeia, apparently the cost estimate is around 6 million right now, and the budget shortage is around 4.2 from what I heard. Staff is still pursuing different grants. Our CIP team has notified me that they're working with Congressman Levin's office to possibly receive some discretionary funds if their application is successful. I think the amount they said is around 4.8 million. Everybody has fingers crossed to see if we can secure that funding from Sacramento. So if we get that's a good opportunity.
That would be great for the kids
That's
getting
the
to school.
Hygeia, correct. So yeah, I know they're working on every opportunity they find to ask for some sort of a grant. They're pursuing that. With regards to at-grade crossing, the preliminary analysis is completed with the consultant. They received a draft memo. They're supposed to walk it with NCTD. I don't know if CPUC is going to be there, but they're going to iron out the suggestions. There are a few alternatives apparently in there. 2 locations they feel very good about, and those 2 locations, if blessed by NCTD, they're planning on presenting to CPUC. They're looking at about a year to 18 months. But I think they have 2 good locations that they want to pursue.
Great, thank you for the update. That is good news that it's moving forward on both of those. And thank you to staff for trying over and over again for the roundabout. So that is spectacular. Anybody else have?
Are they
any
going to
other-
hop the fence to walk?
What was that?
So are they going to hop the fence to walk it?
There is a gate. Maybe they'll open the gate. Any other commissioners' Questions, comments? Okay, I'm just looking over. And then we did talk, the bike lane on Bonita is on there too. We had discussed that last time. What, I don't know, have you had a chance to move forward with that, or?
No, we need to survey that to find out what we're, because if you recall, there were some bulb-out choker type facilities there. I'm not sure with those existing, if parking removal will really help us. We would have to remove all those and rebuild the sidewalk on the edge, on the easterly side. But we do have it on our list of evaluations.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other,
I'm trying to figure out where to put this flash drive again.
any other questions, comments?
And no question, but a comment, traffic engineer Abe and his team presented at Pawlecky Central with the principal and Sheriff Collis and another one of his deputies about some potential improvements we could make at Pawlecky Central after they had done a study as well, and I think that was really great. I just wanted to thank the staff for doing that. And I think I was fairly surprised by the amount of people that already bike and ped on the streets they were evaluating. And the streets are fairly unsafe, so I think with any improvements, you could see an even bigger mode shift.
That's great. I think, is that being presented at City Council this Wednesday?
No,
No.
my plan is to first bring it to commission. We after the discussions that we had over there, a new, not new, but a relatively complicated idea came up that it seemed like that work group, well, I don't know what we want to call it, the task force, like to pursue a pilot program of partial closure of access to Hermes, and then diverting traffic toward Orpheus Park, and then asking parents to drop off kids on the east side of the park and then let them use the stairs. Needs additional signage, some curb marking, some educational efforts, maybe some pamphlets, outreach from school to the parents. So we didn't want to rush it. The plan was to initially present the idea, implementation. The idea came from the task force, but the implementation process to the task force later this month, and then leave the summer for the school to communicate with the parents, and then try to implement the pilot 1 or 2 days a week when the schools open. I'm not sure if I can make it. The tentative date was 20th. I don't think we finalized that date. So the fact that the school is going to close, I think I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it, bring it to We're Dark in July commission, bring it to commission in August, and either before or after commission, talk to the task force again, iron it out, make sure everybody's happy with how we want to implement it, and then start the outreach to the parents after. I mean, it's not going to get late. We can, start maybe in September, October to do it. But that's my plan now, to come to commission in August, talk about it, make sure everybody's happy with it, talk to school again, talk to the task force, and then we'll go from there.
Who's on the task force, if you could ask?
I mean, it was formed really in a unofficial way. I don't think it was really any kind of a formal task force. We had Sergeant Collis from our sheriff's office. We had Deputy Lieutenant Wisniewski. Commissioner Gross was there. Councilmember Hensy was there. School principal was
Princess Seacrest.
Wes Seacrest, Judy,
Judy?
the bike walk. Yeah, Lorfine was there. Who else? There was, I think, one or two. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know how the task force was formed. It was.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, any other questions on this document before we move on? Okay, great. I think we're to development project review, which I think we just look at those ourselves, see if there's anything new we had questions about. I appreciate this. The Vulcan 12, I think, is on Planning Commission this week. I don't see it on this document. I think it's called the Vulcan 12. It's right down from Paulecki, in the old windows and door place. It's where we used to park for the farmer's market. So maybe,
I can look into it. Do you know how many units? Because I think when
I think
we,
it's 12.
just 12 units?
Vulcan 12. I think that's why it's called the Vulcan 12. I
could
don't
be,
know.
yeah.
Maybe it's, I
Yeah,
kind of
when
think.
this was
Yeah.
initiated by one of our former commissioners,
Yes.
who is now in Planning Commission, Commissioner Prendergast,
Yes.
I think we set some sort of a threshold not to have like a huge document. I think it was
Right.
like 50 units, or there was something, I think, there.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
that's why our engineer who puts this together
Okay.
did not include that. If you have questions about it, I can ask him to prepare some sort of a memo on it, if you're curious about something.
No, I didn't know that was
No.
the threshold.
Yeah, I think
and
we have some, because this is obviously not all of the development projects that
Right.
are, yeah. I
Okay,
think they have
that-
some
good
sort of a
point.
cutoff.
I just was thinking it's so close to Paulecki that, okay, great. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think then we are on to agenda item number 9, Commissioner's Corner.
Hear from IT, but the USB is blocked now from the network. We can't use USBs at all.
Oh, so that's why I was like, because it didn't detect it when
Can you email those or text them?
it's a video file, probably too big to be.
Oh,
Oh. No. Yeah, I can explain to us, and if you need to send me something, you can send me an email for.
could we maybe pull up on Google Earth?
The new striping is not yet there.
Okay. Perfect. Could you turn your microphone on, because it's okay, I can barely hear
I
you.
turn it on and off, and I don't remember what it is, but, okay, you can pass this down. Yes. Okay, this first picture is southbound on the cycle track, and it's by Swami's. And as you know, then there's a yield sign there, which I interpret as meaning that the bicycles heading southbound and probably northbound should yield to cars going in and out of Swami's. Now, that's contrary to what usual traffic rules are, is that straight traffic has priority rather than turning traffic. Is that correct? I mean, the yield is you're supposed to stop the bicycles going, but so they're supposed to look in back, see whether any cars coming south. They're supposed to watch for cars coming north and turning left into the Swami's, correct?
That is correct. The southbound bike lane, if it was just a southbound bike lane like we have on Lucadia right now, where there is only a bike lane and adjacent to it a travel lane turning right, we usually don't ask the bicyclist to yield. It's usually the second lane, the vehicle lane that's turning right. So we have these signs on Lucadia that says right turn yield to bicyclists in the bike lane. In this specific case, I did not want the northbound bicyclists who are basically coming opposing traffic in the wrong direction to have the right of way, because although they're going straight and there is a right turn of vehicle turning, but they are in the opposite direction, which is very unusual, and the drivers don't expect them. So between who has the right of way and who might be hurt, I decided to ask the bicyclists to yield. The northbound one, it is fair for them not to yield, but I thought it would be very confusing to have one-sided yield and one side. So basically, the vehicles would have to yield to northbound, would have to yield to southbound bicyclists, but the northbound bicyclists would have to yield to the vehicles. I thought it would be very confusing, so I basically suggested both of them yield because of the risk involved in crossing this conflict area.
Right. Well, I mean, I still think it's kind of confusing because, first of all, you're right next to the sidewalk and there's crosswalk, and so pedestrians, do they yield or do they not yield?
Well, no, the California law, I mean, if they step into the crosswalk, it's theirs.
Okay.
It's a little different. I mean, with a crosswalk,
Yeah.
if you're,
So
if
if
you
a
have 1 foot
bicycle
in there,
goes through at walking speed, then he still has to yield, right?
the pedestrian or the,
No, the
or the vehicle?
bicycle.
The bicycle, if they want to turn or if they
No,
want
if
to
they
go
want to go
straight?
straight, they still have to yield under your sign.
Not really. I mean, the pedestrian goes parallel. So if the pedestrian goes parallel, why would the bicyclist have to yield?
No, I'm saying, sorry, I didn't state that right. So I agree the pedestrian has right of way, no matter what. But if a bicycle wants to go southbound, even if the bicycle is going as slow as pedestrian, then the bicycle still has to yield.
So if there are two, one pedestrian, one bicyclist, want to enter the conflict area, you're saying the pedestrian can go, but the bicyclist has to yield.
Correct.
That is correct, yes. That's, I guess, a glitch in the matrix.
And then if the bicyclist got off his bike and walked across even on the bike path, bike track, then he does or does not have right of way.
Well, I think the bicyclists allowed in our city, because I think we only prohibited riding in sidewalks in business districts and downtown. Those are the only two locations. So everywhere else, a bicyclist is allowed to be in a pedestrian area. There's nothing wrong with it, unless there's anything specific riding in a
Is he allowed to
crosswalk.
is he allowed to get off his bike and walk on the cycle track to the other side of Swami's entrance? Does he
Oh,
have
that's
right of
not
way?
a pedestrian area, so they cannot walk. You cannot ride your bike in a cycle track. You cannot walk your bike
Okay.
in a cycle track.
Okay.
It's,
what I'm
it's,
saying is
I
it's
get you.
confusing.
If we want to go really find what the
Yeah, it's
what the
just that,
CVC says,
50 yards further south, then there's driveways that don't have yield signs. So if a driver comes out of Swami's with right-of-way crossing, but then wants to go into one of the driveways, then he does not have right-of-way. So,
correct. Those driveways, we asked the drivers coming out of those driveways to yield, and there are signs for each driveway that says "Watch both sides" for bicyclists.
right.
But then again, we're talking about vehicles entering and exiting Swamis and the risks that they might pose to cyclists crossing that long crossing distance compared to a driveway.
Yeah, that's the same case at the San Elijo parking lots, both of them. But if you continue further on to Chesterfield, but south of Chesterfield, then the Cardiff Reef, then there's a sign that says turning traffic must yield to bicycles. So what I'm getting at is inconsistent. And when I used to program user interfaces, the number one thing is that your UI has to be consistent no matter what. And in this case, it's like having an icon that sometimes if you click on it, it opens a file and you can edit it. But if you go a little further and you click on the file, then it deletes your file. So that's why I'm objecting to you is the inconsistency, and I don't think that's a good idea.
I mean, if it was one way, I mean, I had consistency in mind, but again, the fact that we have opposing, if it was only one way, cycle track, a protected facility just parallel to the travel lane, I probably would have kept it similar where southbound right turn into Swami's would have to yield to the cyclist in the southbound bike lane. But the fact that I have northbound, I really didn't want northbound to have the right of way. I don't like a car turning right from southbound, to have the right of way over, not to have to yield over to a bicyclist in the opposing direction. That's the reason that I had to yield the northbound direction cycle track. And then I thought it would be inconsistent if I have yield in one direction of the cycle track and not to have yield in the other direction. It would be very confusing. So it was consistency, but it's a different, it's consistency for each location of the new cycle, the new two-way. I guess the two-way is causing this issue. If it was one way, it would have been easy. I would have asked the drivers to yield, like everywhere else, like we have in the first phase. If you're going parallel to the bike lane in the same direction, the turning vehicle has to yield. That's the standard. But because here we have this opposing movement, because I wanted to force the opposing movement to yield, for consistency purposes, I did it for the other direction.
I see. So it's mainly because of northbound bicycle traffic that you have
yield
sign. But the yield sign, of course, is for southbound bicycle traffic.
was added as well, because it's basically an intersection. At that point, it's weird to have one side yield and the other side not yield. It would be very confusing. That's why we created yield for both directions. Because
Okay.
I really see northbound yield being necessary for bikers.
Okay.
I don't like
I appreciate
northbound not yield.
your explanation. I sort of see why you're saying that, but I still think it's more confusing this way.
So you prefer one side yield and the other side not yield? Is
No,
that
I'd prefer that the straight traffic, bicycle traffic either direction has right of way.
even though the northbound is on the right side of the southbound?
Correct, because actually for the southbound cars, they actually see the northbound bicycles even better than southbound bicycles.
Yeah, I mean, the argument would be the southbound is not our regular American way of driving. Like it's in the wrong side. It's southbound traffic on the right side of the correct.
You mean northbound?
The northbound bikeway is on the wrong side of the standard southbound travel lane. Yeah, I guess we're getting into the minutia of, again, this was our decision. I feel like the risk involved in, slowing down bicyclists and having them yield to, because we all know that these would be more recreational, slower riders, and we have the bike lane for our
The faster ones.
sport
yeah.
cyclists, fast ones, and those don't need to yield. Cars would have to yield to them. The number of conflict points increased a lot, as you know, with the introduction of the two-way cycle track. Now we have a lot more conflict points. I think this yielding is benefiting to everybody, to the drivers, to the bicyclists, although it might not be, again, as you said, we can't poke hole into the technicality of who has to yield to what, but I think overall it's more beneficial to have bicyclists in the cycle track yield than the other way around.
Well, I think so, because especially if a car doesn't see it or isn't expecting it because it's all new. I mean, who's going to win between a bike and a car? I'm worried about just the safety there, and so I am glad to see that the bicycles are yielding, because I think, especially with young drivers and even older drivers and me as a driver, it's just a lot of new things happening. So hopefully people will become aware of how to proceed in this section, but I know there is concern about safety. So, but I'm really glad you brought this to our attention, because I'm glad to know the cycles are yielding, which is,
Well, I'm more concerned about consistency, because I don't think it's very consistent having that yield sign, so.
yeah, but
I
also
think I
having a
probably
two-way
will
bike lane is very it's not consistent either with all the
Understand that
others.
people get used to new things, so just to let you know, I probably will speak to council about this on Wednesday. They'll take your word, I'm sure, but I'll register my objection.
I understand.
Okay, thank you for
Okay.
bringing this to our attention. Any other questions about the cycle track? Okay, any other commissioners have anything for Commissioner Corner?
Yeah, two, actually. Sorry, Dan.
Go ahead.
Okay, the first is just the observation that I think long-term for the health of the Safety and Traffic Commission, I would say the single biggest determinant of how we can make the city as safe as possible after maybe the city council is the fire department. And the fire department doesn't come to these meetings. So I find that to be rather peculiar, because so many of our decisions ultimately they have a big say in. And it would be great to understand their, how they think about safety, how they continue to evolve. I'll bring up one example. I know the council, I believe, is voting on the fire department commissioning 2 new vehicles. Both of these vehicles are the standard old-sized vehicles. I think they cost around $1 million. There is a lot more progressive styles of fire department trucks that are out there now that are that play much nicer into the Vision Zero standards that we've signed up for as a city. And so, I'd wonder why we'd be investing in equipment that doesn't necessarily lend itself to more pedestrian and vehicle safety. So I guess one thought I have is just have I ever proposed inviting the fire department? I know they've come once in a while, but on a more standard basis, so because a lot of the things that we discuss here ultimately really take in a lot of their input. So that'd be my first. That's one of my 2 Commissioner Corners comments.
Okay, I will deflect to traffic engineer Bannigan. Can we ask them? Do you know, do they have time? Maybe would they be willing?
Absolutely, per our Muni code, I think it's our fire marshal or representative for our fire department is a de facto member of the traffic commission. We have requested this. There are obviously, their availability and everything. I can request our fire chief to see if they can send them on a more regular basis, our fire marshal or our deputy fire marshal, somebody to our commission meetings.
Okay, great. That would be great. And I do like, I did see that. I was reading about the 2 new vehicles this afternoon on their agenda. And were you guys, did they discuss it with you, with this traffic engineers, the size of the vehicles or the need, or how is that decision made? Do they just propose the vehicle they need, or do you have any idea?
Not really in this case, traffic engineering
Wasn't involved. Well, I mean, maybe Commissioner Gross, that's something if you have time to go speak to this issue at the city council meeting Wednesday, because I do think it is important. And I mean, I don't know, because maybe the fire department isn't aware that there are more Vision Zero types of vehicles for the city. And maybe city council isn't aware. So that might be something you would like to share with them. I think that would be helpful.
Sure, can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I appreciate if we can get them to come. And then my second point, actually, and kind of dovetails a little bit to the fire department, is just some observations on Lucadia Boulevard. So a resident sent me a photo last week. At Lucadia Boulevard at High Metis, the High Metis sign was knocked down. The week before, the one-way on that roundabout was flattened. In the last 3 months, we've also lost a light pole. The light pole on the southeast side of that roundabout was knocked over and still, I think it takes a while through the supply chain to get it fixed. The area is a mess. I think I've counted 6 light bulbs knocked down either at that roundabout or at the other roundabout in the last 2 years. That's the road to Pawlicki for a lot of parents. What I think you have is the 5 freeway, people going westbound, and you have a downhill. So the first roundabout, you hit the downhill, then you hit the stop sign, and then you hit basically another downhill until you get to the 101. I randomly, when one of the light poles was out, I was with Mayor Kranz. I asked him, why, so if you've ever been and seen a lot of roundabouts, like, I was literally just in Amsterdam, it's full of roundabouts. What you have around those roundabouts is a lot of traffic calming. You tend to have, the car lane, the bike lane, and the pedestrian lane, and then you often have speed humps. And they work really well, I think, when you have a lot of traffic calming measures. Those 2 roundabouts in particular just don't have any traffic calming measures. And Mayor Kranz told me the fire department, they proposed speed humps. The fire department said no to them for the reasons they might need to. But I just think, so I guess, sorry, not just complaining. I think the recommendation I'd make if we can have speed bumps would be more signage and then potentially bollards, because when these cars are flying into, light poles and other poles, like they're flying into sidewalks. And so, one, it seems like we can't replace light poles because of the supply chain or whatever it is. If you put bollards in to protect those light bulbs, you won't lose another light pole. So I don't know if we can do. So if we could do signage and we could do bollards, I think that would make those areas at least avoid travesty like cars running over people onto sidewalks, which, fortunately it hasn't happened yet, but they definitely have taken out a lot of signs. And then if we could talk to the fire department, why we couldn't have maybe one, specifically, I think the Lucadia Boulevard and High Metis, close to the freeway, that first downhill, seems to be where the most damage is.
Okay, I agree. I do think we need some sort of traffic calming there. Maybe is this something that we could get on our follow-up log? And maybe when we come back, you would have time to look and see what some of those traffic calming things could be done quickly or not quickly, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, traffic calming on Lucadia, similar to what was just presented, the fact that it's a classified road, non-residential, it would require council direction. With regards to implementation of bollards, we did something similar, not traffic, but working with our CIP group at El Portal by Lucadia Glass on the southwest corner. When the roundabout was built, there were like 2 or 3 cars, I think, within a few weeks that missed the roundabout. Well, not missed it, but didn't come back into the southbound lane and ended up in the southwest corner. So rigid posts were built on that corner. We can go through the collision history. Obviously, the Lucadia roundabouts are way older, so there should be a good, and the fact that these are public facilities that are being damaged, there are records of them for reimbursement for the city. As Sergeant Collis mentioned, we do get those collision reports, and then we file for reimbursement from their insurance. And so there should be a good amount of records for us to find out which corners are being hit more, and possibly look into some sort of a rigid bollard implementation. That would be more our CIP team, but I can convey the message, do the evaluation for them, and just pass them the info.
Okay, that's great. I can't remember the wording here. I moved to put that on the follow-up blog. I think we need 3 commissioners.
Yeah, I'll second
I'll
that.
second that, third that.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick comment. I had the opportunity, along with some of my colleagues here on the commission, to participate in the Citizens Academy that the city has put on. And first of all, I would say it was a very worthwhile thing to participate in. It was on Tuesday evenings and ran 2 or 3 hours. And each department within the city structure made a presentation about what they do and how they do it, and answered questions. And our very own traffic engineer was one of the presenters, and so I wanted to give a shout out to him. It was obvious that the staff had put a lot of time into preparing these presentations and giving the information out, so thank you for that.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I missed that. I wasn't aware that was happening.
Yeah, I participated in that too. There
Nice.
were 6 sessions every other week for 3 months.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be,
I'm just amazed at how much of the city is invisible. This is like an iceberg. 90% of the city just continues to function. And the part that people see is just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot of good cooperation between departments.
Well, that sounds great. Maybe you can let us know when we return when the next one will be for the
yes, I
public
think I
and
was
for
told it's
us.
going to be twice a year or something. But yeah, we'll definitely remember. I mean, next time maybe I announce it, or maybe Amanda can email commissioners in case somebody's interested.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this was the first one that they had done, first year. It was good. I did not get a chance to attend all of them, so I plan to do it next year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any other commissioners for Commissioner Corner?
Yes. Sorry,
Bailey?
I just want to backtrack a little bit about the cycle track. Are you going to be collecting any data since the new striping? Is there any way to figure out or how to differentiate who's what type of cyclist or pedestrian is using the various tracks? Is there any way to get data on that? Yeah, I mean, I would second Commissioner Wong's sentiment in that it is confusing. There's no doubt about it. And just, I've ridden it several times since it was painted. Well, northbound, there's a couple of things that are new, not as dramatic, obviously, as southbound, but I think it's very confusing, and I think when summer hits, if it ever does, with the camp, I had a long discussion with a couple of maintenance people that look after the camp, and they're very, very concerned, especially with the U-turn there, and just kind of blocking a couple of lanes, but out into the road. So the sport cyclists who are using the main road are definitely going to be stopped. And then
Are you talking, when you say camp, are you talking?
campground.
The campground,
Campground,
okay.
yeah, sorry, campground. Yeah, and I think then you start talking about pushing into the oncoming, northbound traffic. And as you know, there's some very large groups, mostly on Saturday. There's two, but we're talking 40, 50, 80 cyclists when it's when a lot of people are participating. But it's a big group, and it's going to be chaos. Yeah. So I'm wondering if since obviously it's only a few weeks old, and if you're able to collect some data and kind of see who's using which track. And I know with the campground, people who are going to the campground are not from around here, so they're going to be a little bit confused no matter what. But I'm wondering if we could get some data and then maybe figure out what to do.
Before counts were conducted in December, to be basically comparing apple to apple, we can collect data, but our, I guess, base point would be December count. So we were planning on redoing that count in December. And also, usually a new facility might have both the honeymoon effect of, attracting a lot of people, or the reverse, which is a lot of people are not comfortable with it. They don't see how to use it, and it's new. They want to see how it works. So a very, very fresh count usually is not a very good indication. What I can say for sure, I've driven it tens of times these past few weeks that it was going in. I do see a lot of new users. I'm pretty sure about the 5-6 years I've been with the city, I haven't seen that many kids in that area of 101. We obviously had our sports cyclists pretty much always there, but now you're seeing a new user group, not in the tens and hundreds, but you do see them there, and you can clearly see that these are not people who were riding there before. So the main goal of the project that was introducing a new facility and attract new users. It seems like it's starting to function. I'm with you. This project is a very, very unique. I don't want to say it's like one in the state, but there aren't that many projects where you combine a two-way facility with an existing, partly existing, because the bike lane was not existing all along the stretch. There were some areas that we had a bike lane. So there are a lot of new conflict points. Is it confusing? Yes, because there are more conflict points. Wherever you introduce a new intersection to the road, now there are more conflict points. Eliminating that bike lane that is beloved by our sports cyclists would have eliminated a lot of these conflict points. But we decided to keep it for them. We could have said, like the first phase, hey, Sharrow, cycle track. But we decided, because if we had a Sharrow, a lot of these conflict points would have been eliminated. Because of the fact that we kept the bike lane in place, we added bike lane in some areas, now we have a lot more conflict points. The two-way situation adds to the number of conflict points that we have. I'm happy that you're saying you did ride it. When you drive it, you see all these lines. It feels like, what is going on? But when you actually ride it, or even you drive it a few times, you notice that your travel pattern didn't change. We didn't drop any lanes. We didn't drop any left turn pocket. The U-turns are there. All the vehicle facilities that were there are still there. We just narrowed down the lanes. So that's something that a lot of times people, what happened here? Well, really nothing for vehicles. The vehicles are, have the number of lanes they had, the left turns, the U-turns, everything. We even added some right turn pockets that didn't exist. Something that is missing, that many of these conflict points were there. The entrance to the campground, if you go to Google Street View and see what was out there, you would be scared. How did we ride here? How did we drive here? There was this huge right turn pocket into the campground with no bike lane whatsoever, with no marking. There was a 30-footer wide, you can measure it. The number 2 lane southbound was 30 feet wide, and bicyclists were riding in it with no bike lane. And you have these campers going into the campground. Now that 30 feet is used, there are a bunch of lines, obviously. There's a right turn pocket, there's a bike lane, there's a cycle track. So all these markings are new, but the number of conflict points didn't really change. The bicyclists still have to navigate with the campers turning right into the campground. The left turners onto the campground still go in. Cars coming out of the campground still cross the bike lanes. So many of these conflict points are not new. They were there just because they were not marked before. Now you see all of them out there. Oh, what happened? So there are a lot of. I mean, I guess we bombarded the area with signs and pavement markings. The advantage is, a lot of these new users, as you said, will see the signs and will try to, kind of decipher the signage and pavement markings and the stuff that's out there. Not liked by a lot of our residents. It's not a good scene to see so many signs. These were all balancing acts. Some of these signs I can see in the future, maybe in a year, I just remove them because they're not mandatory signs. I'm just having them for information purpose. The fact that it's a new project, a lot less information would be needed in a year or two. Similar to the cycle track, we had some situations where some of our even experienced cyclists had some unfortunate situations trying to navigate between the Sharrow and the cycle track, getting in, getting out. All of those disappeared. Many of them are using the Sharrow. Many of them are using the cycle track. There are definitely conditions. I'm not saying there's not room for improvement. This was, again, a very, very complicated project, very unique project. But I hope, I'm getting both sides from the residents. A lot of parking. I really love what happened to parking over there. Now we have backing parking, a lot of space for our surfers, for our beachgoers. They don't need to park on the east. The number of people crossing 101 drastically lowered. Luckily, we didn't have any injury, but if you check historic aerials, hundreds of cars used east side parking, and people would cross over a 60, 70-footer area with a median fast road. Now their crossing distance, if they park, is only 30 feet. I anticipate lowering. I already see when I drive, I notice the speed is a lot lower. I'm sure you noticed that too. That speed will go down. We will not have a 40-mile-per-hour road. I can guarantee that. I don't want to survey this very quick because the project is not completed. Technically, we're not allowed to conduct a survey. I can see the speed limit going down. So there are a lot of benefits coming with new users using it. Additional parking. Storage for campground has increased. We now have a storage space. They didn't have a right turn pocket. When it backed out, it would back out into the number 2 lane. Now they have their own storage area. So there are a lot of advantages with this. There are complications. There are inconveniences. The bike lane is not as wide as before. Correct. Cyclists before, where they had a 25-footer number 2 lane, 4 of them could ride side by side, and the vehicles could use the lane safely, being 5 feet away from them. These 4 cyclists will not be able to ride side by side. It is an inconvenience, but does that make it an unsafe design? No. There is a bike lane 6 feet wide, 5 feet wide. They can ride single file. There's no mandate to the city, to the engineer, to provide the possibility to our sports cyclists to ride side by side. If I ride by a friend, I'd rather ride side by side. I'd rather be 8 feet away from a car beside me, but those don't make a design wrong, and those don't make us, reconsider our design element. There are a lot of factors like that: convenience, comfort, I guess, niceness, and beauty of the ride. Enjoying the ride. Definitely, a lot of our sports cyclists enjoyed their rides a lot more than now. But again, is that considered wrong design because it's not as enjoying as before? So there are a lot of factors. I've heard all of them. We get all sorts of emails.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you have. Yeah, and I am. Yeah, kind of speaking from the sport cyclist side. I would say I think the word is conflict, and kind of I don't want to speak for everybody, but who rides, over 20 miles an hour, say, for example. It is about avoidance. You want to have some room to get out of the way of a car door or a pedestrian, depending on where you're at. And so maybe my perspective is that with the lines, you're kind of limited. It is narrower, like you said. Yeah, you can ride side by side, but not wider than that, because the cars are really, they're really next to you now, and that goes with the northbound. So we're used to a little bit more room on the northbound. But yeah, I understand that for the non-sport cyclist, there would be more usage. There's more area on that side for sure. Now, if someone's crossing through that from parking, crossing through that 2-lane cycle track, that might be there a little bit of conflict, but they're probably not going as fast. I mean, e-bikes, can go a little bit faster. They're heavier, but there might be some conflict there. But you're not nervous about the back-in parking and kind of the sight line, depending on how big the cars are. I mean, definitely if you're a small car parked south of a trailer, or not a trailer, but a truck, you won't be able to see until your nose is peeking out into the lane.
So our downtown diagonal parking, the spaces that we have in downtown, they are 15 feet deep, 14 and 15. The ones that we have out there are 18 feet deep. If you drive, you'll notice that even long, like F-250s even, they fit perfectly fine in there. If their tires are touching the wheel stop, their front bumper would not even get to we have this narrow 2-footer buffer zone. We call it like a front bumper zone so a vehicle coming out of these parking spaces first have to cross that 2-footer area before encroaching into the bike lane. The bike lane is also 6 or 7 in some areas there. So the goal was the bicyclist will see the bumper coming out. The driver, obviously, it was discussed back in or head in when this was presented to commission and council. Overwhelmingly, both council and commission voted for back in for consistency with the streetscape, and also the fact that back out would have a limited chance of seeing the cyclist behind them. They felt heading out would be a lot easier to see. For parking maneuver, similar to every other parking maneuver, even when we have parallel parking with a door zone buffer or without a door zone buffer, our bike lanes are 99% of the time on the left of a parked car. So the parked cars usually get out of the lane, out of the travel lane, stop in the bike lane and door zone buffer, and then do their parallel parking. So pretty much at all times, a bicyclist, I do see in social media, many cyclists, I don't know what your position is, like the idea of getting out of the bike lane into the travel lane. CVC does allow that with interpretation of sorts to say you're passing that vehicle. I don't like that interpretation. Bicyclist is not passing that vehicle. You would have to stop. My interpretation, I don't know what our traffic sergeant opinion, our deputy's opinion is that, how it flies in court. I feel the bicyclist has to stop behind a car who is parallel parking, let them make their parallel parking maneuver, and then continue. Similar to a travel lane. If I'm in a travel lane, if a car wants to parallel park, I don't just pass them. I wait behind them, let them park. But this is similar with back-in parking in our campground area where we have it. If a bicyclist sees a car getting into this 8-9-footer area, which is a 6-7-footer of bike lane and a 2-footer buffer area, the car can easily navigate into the diagonal parking without encroaching into the travel lane. It's like a park assist lane per se. Again, inconvenience to the bike lane before, because it was a 30-footer outer lane, the parking maneuver would happen and the cyclist can just pass them. But there was no bike lane, and where would that bike lane position themselves? You're counting on the experience of the cyclist, how they assume that person would make their parallel parking maneuver, how much their front left wheel will come out when they're making. So all those things comes with the experience. Where there's no marking, you know where you position your bike. A lot of other bikers might not know how to do it and put them, if they want to pass that car that's making that parallel maneuver, they might hurt themselves, they might injure themselves. So again, concern, yes. Is that a safety hazard? I really don't see it. I mean, we implemented as much as we could out there to make sure everybody knows what to do. Again, it causes people to slow down. Is it a bad thing? I don't think it's a bad thing. If I'm forcing everybody to ride, I know sports cyclists don't like it, but if it causes people to slow down to figure out what to do, is that make the design wrong? are we, again, I hate to say this on record, but we are not as traffic engineers, as city engineers, our main goal for this project or for any bike project, active transportation project, is to create a convenient, comfortable situation for our sports cyclists, while our other groups that don't have the opportunity, don't have the facility to use, cannot come out there and use our facility. I guess that's the way to put it. Again, I use the word supposed once wrong. I said this project was supposed to create this situation, and a lot of people took it in the wrong way that, hey, you intentionally wanted to hurt sports cyclists. It's not. Our goal was that if we create this opportunity for our other users that are not using the facility, this we knew would happen. This inconvenience was not unforeseen. But the city, the staff, the council, commission knowingly decided to provide this opportunity for other users that do not have a facility to ride on.
Absolutely, I can see that, and yeah, I think it will become more and more evident that yeah, you will get more people using those lanes. For sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think people will be, sports cyclists will be a little bit discouraged to use that corridor, maybe. I think it'll be a bit more of a conflict than phase one, down along Restaurant Row into Cardiff. But yeah, I think it's new, and I'm sure we'll make adjustments. So I think we have to kind of
I'm surprised.
let's see what happens. But I'm sure you've heard both sides of the story, and some negative from.
I see a lot of sports cyclists in there, interestingly.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised.
In the two-way.
In the cycle track, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's one reason is many of our sports cyclists use the facility where our recreational users are not around. And this is pretty wide this time. The previous one way was 6'7". This one is like 12 feet in a lot of areas.
Yeah. I think it's a little scary to have two-way going through there. For me personally, but I can see that.
We got into a long conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to. No, but I appreciate your explanation. And we'll see what happens this summer. Well, hopefully,
We do have a presentation.
No one will get hurt.
This Wednesday for council, if you're interested. I'm sure many of these comments, concerns, questions will come up. So if you have time, you can attend council or just watch it.
Okay.
There is a small presentation that we're giving council
Okay.
on completion of the project.
Okay, great. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Okay, I think Mr.
Yeah.
Commissioner Johnson has been waiting.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson here. First of all, I'm really happy that we've decided to do something for Saxony. Traffic calming and making it safer for bicycles is a big win for the population of the city. Okay? We're not, nothing is happening yet because we made just a recommendation to council. They'll review it. They may make some changes. They may decide not to fund it right away. That's their prerogative. I want to mention what's happening on Quail Gardens Drive. The developer of the Baldwin property, Quail Meadows it's called, right east of the Botanic Garden, had a CPP meeting the other day, last week. They're proposing 5- and 6-story apartment buildings on that site. There's some environmental problems, and so a good portion of the site is not buildable, so they're wanting to go high-rise on the parts that they can build on and let the gnatcatchers have some habitat. A few meetings back, we'd had a plan proposed for Quail Gardens Drive, and I know the commission at the time rejected it. However, many of my neighbors want to see something happen there, and they're going to bring this up, whether they bring it straight to council or whether it goes through the commission first. So I would like to ask us to reconsider our decision on Quail Gardens Drive, not necessarily the next meeting, but maybe the meeting after.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I think when we were at that previous meeting, I think we were hopefully waiting to see what the consultant had. So I'm most comfortable waiting to see what the consultant's report comes back for Quail Gardens. I think that's what we had decided as a commission. So that's where I stand on that. Waiting to see that report from the consultant.
Yeah. I'm not really sure we have a consultant here. We have a drawing that was made by staff. Was a consultant involved in that?
So, sorry, let me just take a step back. There is a consultant that is evaluating all of the traffic plans
Yes.
and on all of these different things. And so that was the report I think we decided to wait on, but I can defer to traffic engineer Bandigan.
No, that is correct. There is a consultant who is evaluating corridors around development projects citywide to come up with a list of potential projects in the vicinity of these potential future development projects for council. There are going to be 3 or 4 different community meetings in summer, and in October it will be presented. November will be presented to the city council for their prioritization of the projects. That report will be presented to commission before going to council. Somewhere in September, October, I anticipate. At that meeting, commission's opinion was, let's wait for the fruition of that study, and we'll go from there. However, the fact that Saxony and Quail Gardens Drive were on the council-approved work plan of the division, I would have to provide my study, obviously with the commission input to council. Both Saxony and Quail were just studies that on this fiscal year's work plan. So I just have to present it to council. If council decides to continue with some sort of an implementation or just wait for that study, we'll know at that point.
Okay, that's fair. I just want to mention that there's some powerful people who want to see something happen there. The E3 group among them, and the Four Corners Consortium. And I'm getting some pressure from them to make something happen.
Understood. Again, commission's position, I have it on record. I have it in the meeting minutes. I will include that in my report to council. If commission's position is going to change before I go to council, I will take the new position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Any other concerns, questions? Okay, yes, I actually have one quick one, and I will make this really quick because I know it's getting late. Could you bring up Google Maps for me, please, and just pull up Encinitas Boulevard at Saxony, at that corner?
Street view or aerial?
Can you start with aerial and then let's jump down maybe to street view? So I think that intersection was redesigned a little while ago.
Correct.
With the right-hand turn lane onto Saxony, and then there's a lane, the lane next to it goes straight and it goes onto the 5 freeway. And every single time I am in the 5 freeway line, the cars that are supposed to be turning in the dedicated right-hand turn lane onto Saxony, at least one or two of them doesn't realize they're in the wrong lane, and then they drive straight, and then we're both trying to get onto the freeway, and they cut me off in my lane. So I was just wondering, I know there's plenty of signage, but I was wondering if maybe you could just do pavement legend for this, like, right lane has to turn right onto Saxony, and then the 5 freeway, you could put like one of those 5 freeway signs, you know, this lane is for 5 freeway, that lane is for the right-hand turn lane. I'm not sure if any other commissioners have had that situation, but I feel it's kind of dangerous, and it makes me
There is a
uncomfortable.
redesign for that exact situation that you're talking about. The design was finalized 2 months ago or 3 months ago. I can send it to you. It's in implementation. It will be fixed. We are aware of that situation. There is a full-on redesign for that 2 block east of Saxony. Starts from the entrance to the gas station. Starts from here.
Yeah.
The bike lane goes further
You know what,
out.
we can't see it. Are you showing us?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, this is the old design. Obviously, this is not what's out there right now, but with the new design, we'll have 2 right turn lanes here. One is just for Saxony. The other one goes straight into the Caltrans right turn. So you'll have the possibility of the Saxony right turns can just turn right with no conflict. They won't go straight. And the second one will go toward Caltrans right away. And then the bike lane would be on the left side.
Okay.
I can send you an email for
Okay.
it. But yeah, it what's out there right now is being reconfigured.
Okay, and will you put pavement legend down? Like, I find that very, very helpful as you're coming up, like if it says, you know, right lane turns right, or even just one that had the 5 freeway sign to just show people like, yeah, you're in the 5 freeway line. No, you're not in the 5 freeway line. Like, I just think, even though there's signs, there's so much happening at that intersection, I think that might be
I'll look
helpful.
into it. Mhm.
Okay.
To add a pavement legend there, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That was my last one. Anybody else?
Thank you for bringing that up
You're
with
welcome.
me today.
It happened to you today? It's a. Okay, well, I guess if there's nothing else, may I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Adjourn.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.